All right. Welcome, everybody. All right. Hope you enjoyed the show. Goodbye. This was the final round. Action-filled round. See you guys later. Just kidding. Welcome, everybody. The show begins with the final round of the 2024 U.S. Masters, live from downtown Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm GM Daniel Naroditsky. Huge shout out, proper shout out coming later, but initial shout out to Caden for covering all of the morning rounds, including this morning round. I'll bring you up to speed on the standings and what is at stake in terms of Fabi specifically, but also, of course, the financial stakes, which are incredibly high. But on board one, we see Fabiano Caruana with the black pieces. He won the morning round very convincingly, perhaps less convincingly than you might think. And when there's a lull in the action, I'll do a quick recap of the morning round. But we don't have time for that right now because the moves are coming in hot and fast. The round has started, and Fabi takes on Mark Hyman, a very unexpected pairing. I think most players were expecting him to be paired with Grigori Oparin, but because of the incredibly unique tournament standings, Mark Hyman seemingly came out of nowhere. The international master, who is a known entity in American chess, he's been around for a long time, and he's a really good player. He's been hanging around the high 2400s, but he defeats, I think, 3 GMs in a row. Well, not in a row, but he defeated Bortnik with black. He draws 2 GMs, and then he defeats Yair Parha from Israel and Mikhail Antipov in the morning with the black pieces again. And his reward is to try to prevent Fabiano Caruana from qualifying to the candidates tournament, as well as from winning the tournament. So a quick recap of the standings before we take on this position and do our usual routine. I just want to thank everybody who's joined me thus far for the evening rounds. You definitely don't want to miss the action because this final round is going to decide absolutely everything. Nothing has been decided yet. Sometimes there's one player with a runaway score. That could not be further from the case, thankfully, here at the U.S. Masters. The tournament is too strong to allow for something like that. Fabiano and Nicholas Theodoro, they both sit on 7 points out of 8. Nicholas drew a very difficult game. He was worse for most of the game against Donchenko, but he held the draw, and he's got white against Ilya Nizhnik. Then there is a group of 3 players with 6.5 out of 8. Those players are Grigori Oparin, Fabiano's longtime second, Ilya Nizhnik, and of course, Fabiano's opponent, Mark Hyman. And then there is a monster group of players with 6. I don't even want to count how many there are. Something like 10 players with 6 points out of 8, who include a lot of international masters who are having fantastic events, as well as GM Norm chances. I think Evan Park has already secured a GM Norm, but we'll have time to discuss all of that later. Let's get into the action, folks. As usual, I do have my stream chat up on the third monitor, actually. For once, I'm not memeing. So if you have questions or you want to alert me to action in one of the games, we're working as a team to cover all the interesting moments as they unfold. All right. Just a moment here. I'm going to make sure my chat is up. There is my chat. Just a second, guys. Oh. Okay. All right. I guess when my tech support buddy Caden Schroff walks in, I'll ask him how to pull up the chat, but I'll pull it up on my phone. So if you have questions, I'll have my Twitch chat open, and I'll be keeping an eye on it throughout the show. Mark Hyman has 6.5 out of 8, so he's got half a point less than Fabiano Caruana, who he plays. Okay, so we are going to be commentating without the eval bar and without the engine for the vast majority of the show. Obviously kind of an experimental setup, but especially for this last round, I think it's a good idea to put ourselves in the player's shoes and experience, what they are experiencing. Okay, so we have here a Taimano variation by Fabi. He played the French twice. But the pairings came out 45 minutes before the round, so probably Hyman had a quick chance to take a look at Fabi's games from this tournament. Very smart decision by Fabi. I mean, obviously, it goes without saying he wants to win this game with the black. He is not satisfied with the quick draw. Even if Nizhnik and Theodoro make a draw, Fabi just, by definition, and Mark Hyman is a different kind of definition, but Fabi, by definition, needs to play for a win here. For the sake of rating, for the sake of money. He's got a pretty good pairing, all things considered. All right, so we have a Taimanov here, and already on move 5, a surprise from Hyman, the move Bishop F4, which I have seen before, but I don't know anything about it. Like, I know that it's a sideline that exists. We'll use Opening Explorer to help us kind of get our bearings here. Of course, Knight C3 is often considered sort of, automatic. There are other moves in the position. I mean, C4 exists, but C4 is more common against the Khan Sicilian. Against the Taimanov, it's quite dubious. So the vast majority of the time you see Knight C3, Queen C7, so here White starts choosing a setup. There's G3, there's the very topical move Bishop E3, there's after A6 the old main line with Queen D2, the new main line with Queen F3, so there's a million different setups. There's the quiet lines with Bishop E2 and Bishop D3, but all of that menu of options is unlocked after Knight C3. Hyman plays the move Bishop F4. Very interesting move. All right. Just a moment. Just checking to make sure all the cameras are working. Looks like everything is working as it should. So we'll have access to the 3 board cameras as well as the playing hall camera. Bishop F4 by Hyman. Let's look at Opening Explorer. So obviously this move has been played before. I should mention that it does not in fact blunder a piece because E5 there's Knight takes C6 and White simply captures on E5. So this does not lose the game. Fabi playing the most popular move D6. Knight takes C6, main line, BC, and C4. So White does try to get this. I mean, I'm trying to figure out, is this a positional line or is it a tactical line? It's sort of very, very hard to say. I guess the question is, where is White going to castle? Is White going to castle to the queen side or the king side? And judging by the move C4, I think the answer is pretty clear. My guess is that White's aim here is to castle to the king side and to clamp down on this backward pawn on D6. The only problem, of course, is that this bishop on F4 is like, a middle schooler at a dance. It's kind of awkward, and Black demonstrates that with a move. Never mind, I thought Fabi played E5, but no, Fabi played Rook B8. Attacking the B2 pawn. This is the second most common move. E5 is more popular. Hyman played Queen D2. Now Fabi plays E5. Okay, so he threw in these 2 moves. And Fabi has spent quite a bit of time already. So, Queen D2, and currently it's Black to move. E5 has not been played yet. I find it hard to believe that Fabi will resist the temptation to play this move. But it looks like he may already be out of his prep. Let's kind of get a sense of what games have reached this position to see how topical this is. E5, 41 games according to Opening Explorer. If we click on those games, we can see some of the ratings. And remember, these ratings are sometimes titled Tuesday ratings. I don't think David Paravian has achieved Magnus Carlsen's peak rating plus 200. Okay, so a lot of games for 2024. A lot of games. Ariantari, that can't be a coincidence. I faced him in the Blitz tournament. Several games by Ariantari. Eric Rosen on the black side. Okay, so clearly it was recommended maybe in some Chessable course. Maybe the chat can let me know. But it's hard to say right now. Now, Rook B8 is quite rare. And after Queen D2, I already see only a handful of games. 1 game Knight F6, 1 game Queen B6, and 2 games E5. Black won both. Nigmatov versus Gladura from 2023. And Murzin versus Kacharava. So 2 pretty high-level games. This one was from the CCT plan, so rapid. And then the other one was 2022 World Junior Championship, so a classical game. So let's have a look at this other game. Murzin versus Kacharava. E5, and Black quickly played F5. Very ambitious treatment of the position. F4. Honestly, looks very dubious for Black. Big development advantage. Black's center is collapsing. Of course, Black has conquered the need for development. So the guy developed a knight that's good enough. I don't need any other pieces. Okay, so finally decided to bring out some other ones. And black ended up getting the upper hand in what looks like a completely insane game. This is, I guess, what Fabi wants. Holy smokes. Yeah, this is... Okay, we're going to stop the analysis here because we've got a different game we need to look at. That's pretty crazy. I find it hard to believe that Fabi will play e5 followed by f5. So the other two moves that have been played are knight f6 and queen to b6. Yeah, knight f6 is very natural on the surface, but I would be quite worried about allowing the move e5, obviously. And white responded with knight c3, and here again, black has a choice of two different moves, e5 and queen b6. But to me, the natural move that has to be calculated, of course, is e5. And Fabi has just made a move. What move is it? It is... Let's refresh. Okay, he did play knight f6, just as I'm talking about it. As the higher-rated player, in this case, the much higher-rated player, you want to play kind of a balanced brand of chess. So on the one hand, you want to be slightly provocative because, you know, winning a game with black against a solid opponent who's having essentially the tournament of his life requires getting a combative position. Hyman doesn't even consider e5. He plays knight c3. My guess would be e5. Black can even play d takes e5. And even the endgame doesn't look too bad for black. But maybe there's also knight e4. And I can't blame Hyman for not wanting to get to do this against Caruana. I wouldn't Caruana do this either. Queen a5 check. No, this looks awful. I mean, white's just not developed, and, you know, this rook is very well placed. For example, like knight d2. I think even d takes e5 can be thrown in. No, this looks like trash. So Hyman goes knight c3, and finally we see the move e5, which occurs a little bit later than I expected it to. Only game in the database on chess.com. Actually, two games, Durarbeli Lazovic and this game Nigmatov Glidura that I've mentioned before. Black seems to be winning every game that I'm clicking on. Like, I don't think white, I've seen a single half point by white, so I don't think it's because white is worse. White's, I mean, I would bet a silver dollar that white is not worse here. It's probably about equal. But typically in the Sicilian, when black has a pawn like this on c6 and a semi-open b file, you know, from a strategic standpoint, black's structure is quite healthy. You know, yeah, there's an isolated pawn, but it's on a7. Nobody really cares about that pawn. Black has the long-term possibility of pushing d5. And, you know, white has set up this kind of Marozzi bind in order to keep the d6 pawn at bay. But the d6 pawn is also very hard to attack because white's dark-scored bishop is shut out. Black will just keep his bishop on e7. And as I mentioned, the breakthrough d6, d5 is not out of the question sometime in the middle game. One very important clarification. Actually, two clarifications. First of all, is Hyman on track for a GM norm? I will confirm with Peter. What he needs for a GM norm, my guess would be with a draw or a victory, I can tell you for sure he'll get a norm. With a loss, I will confirm. Does Hyman get a GM norm with a loss? It's going to be close because he's beaten 3 GMs. I will confirm that. The other very important thing, if you're watching on chess.com/events, remember that sometimes the scores attached to the players are misleading. In fact, most of the time. The scores reflect only the games that have been spotlighted on the DGT board. So if you see Mark Hyman 4 out of 5, it's not because he decided, I don't want to play 3 games. He has played all 8 games. It's just that not all of them were transmitted live on the boards. To see the actual standings, you need to go onto the official website. You can just Google US Masters chess. Probably the US Masters golf tournament will come up, unfortunately. So US Masters chess, and the official website has the standings. Okay, so really important. Otherwise, you might get the wrong impression. Bishop e3 has been played. We are commentating without the engine and without the eval bar for the first part, at the very least, of the stream. Hyman has 6.5 out of 8. I guess when the tournament ends and he leaves for the airport, he becomes Mark Byman. Okay, that was unnecessary. What is necessary for Fabi probably is to defend the a7 pawn, because I mentioned that it's irrelevant, but that doesn't mean you want to blunder it. So my instinct here for black would be queen a5. if Fabio wants to play more positionally, he can also play a7, a5. Just like clamping down a little bit on the queen side. I think Fabio is mostly happy with his position. It's hard for me to say whether this is some chessable course, because Hyman is playing quite fast. But it might also be because there aren't really any options for white. Maybe some people in the chat were tempted by bishop g5, but the bishop is even more misplaced here. Like black plays bishop e7, and there's constantly going to be these annoying tactics with like knight takes e4. And castling to the queen side when black has this wide open b file to attack on is you know, this is seppuku. Like black can even, oftentimes black can even just abandon the d6 pawn. And if white has to give up an entire bishop for it, like something like this is a very common idea in the Rouser Sicilian as well. This is precisely what Fabio wants. He wants like a super combative position, unbalanced with good attacking chances. Hyman needs to play more solidly than that. Okay, so instead we see bishop to e3, and Fabio is thinking about his next move. Yeah, looks like a pretty calm Sicilian as far as Sicilians go. My guess would be we're going to see something like queen c7. Then Hyman might play bishop e2. Fabio will probably follow suit. They both will probably castle to the king side, and we're going to get sort of a complex strategic battle in the center. My guess would be Fabio's out of prep. I mean, I find it hard to believe that... again, out of prep can mean several things. It can mean he's never seen this position in his life, or it can mean it's contained in some obscure chess-based file from 7 years ago, and there's no way to remember it. These top players are not encyclopedias. I mean, they kind of are, but you cannot know everything. There's just too much information. But again, Hyman played this very rare move, bishop f4. I mean, this is extremely uncommon. It seems to be fashionable these days. So Fabio probably knew the move d6, but around here, my guess would be he's either out of prep or, you know, he's just sort of vaguely has a sense of where the pieces belong. But it's, you know, a lot of people think that these top players, they know absolutely everything. They know 30 moves of theory in every line. They do know 30 moves of theory in the main lines. Oftentimes for these sidelines, they might have a rough file or a rough understanding of, you know, in this type of position, the black queen belongs on c7. But he might not remember the exact position that's currently on the board. Does that make sense? Okay, so my prediction is queen c7, but Fabio's also probably seriously considering a5 or even queen a5. Let's see, opening explorer. Yeah, queen a5 has been played once. And I also see that knight g4 has been played. What a move. Sacrificing the pawn on a7. In fact, essentially forcing white to take it. And black's aim here seems to be to chase down the bishop. Aha. Very ingenious. Who was the originator of this idea? It was Benjamin Gladura. So this game, Nigmatov versus Gladura from Rapid 2023. Benjamin, the Hungarian Grandmaster, rook b7, h3. Bishop e3, I think, is... Sorry, whoops. Let me fast forward again. This is Nigmatov Gladura, the only game to reach the current position. So, rook b7, h3. Yeah, I was going to show that bishop e3... Okay, I guess I can't analyze on this board. Bishop e3, there was knight takes e3, so let's just go back to the game position. Yeah, knight g4. I'm very intrigued by this move. And maybe this is what's catching Fabio's eye. So bishop e3, okay, thank God it doesn't fast forward to move 85. Knight takes e3, and white cannot recapture with a queen. Like, white has to play this move. Ugh. And I mean, I wouldn't be totally confident that white is worse here, but clearly black has compensation. But Nigmatov played h3. Gladura took the bishop anyway, of course. hg, whoops. Now I didn't mean to click on it. Bishop takes g4. Lots of mouse slips. I'm too used to playing OTB Blitz now. Bishop e2. Bishop e6. Black, of course, wants to keep the bishop pair. And you get this very, like, unbalanced position. Like, visually, it may seem that black is better, but I actually would not be convinced because white starts sending these queenside pawns down the board really quickly. Like, a4, a5 comes, and, you know, by the time black gets out of bed, like, there's an a-pawn already sitting on a5. So Gladura actually went rook a3, trying to slow down the progress of these pawns. Yeah, you get a really complicated position. Hard to evaluate without engine analysis. So let's have a selective look at what Mr. Stonkfish recommends. in this position? My guess would be it frowns upon knight g4, and something like queen c7 is more to its liking. I like how I'm treating it like a human being. No, of course, the inverse is true. So let's see. Queen c7, it believes... Yeah, I mean, approximately all moves have an equivalent assessment. Looks like it's a slight edge for white. Bishop e2, bishop e7. Yeah, kind of like what I roughly had calculated. Castles, castles. It's a good choice by Hyman. Like, he has a very solid position here. Something like h3 to prevent knight g4. Yeah, and you get a very, like, tame positional battle. When I look at this with human eyes, it doesn't seem to me that black is seriously worse. Like I said, you know, like you often kind of want the structure in the Sicilian. At the same time, white doesn't have any targets. Everything is defended like 4 times. And Hyman can just chill here, like put his rooks on d1 and c1. So you can look at this from 2 different perspectives. Yeah, black doesn't have any immediate problems, but how is black going to win this game if white just, you know, if white just chills out? I mean, if Hyman gets a position that's this easy to play, you might even have time to hit the gym during the game. So knight g4 by Fabi, just... Okay, great timing, I think, with spotlighting this move. I think Fabi recognizes that if he doesn't try to stir some stuff up right now, you might get something that's almost impossible to win. So knight g4 played. And you can see that bishop takes a7 is not forced. White can also go the other way, bishop g5. And now you might get some real crazy action. f6, bishop h4, and h5. Yep, not every day you play a move like this in the Sicilian. And now the computer gives h3, knight h6, and now a very nice move, f3, to guarantee passage back to f2 with white's bishop. And here again, yeah, white is slightly better. Black's whole construction here on the king side is quite suspect. So I really like bishop g5. Now that I've noticed this move, bishop g5, Fabi might want to go queen c7. But again, this is like an inscrutably complex position. Huge decision for Hyman. Does he play bishop a7 and go for the predecessor game, rook b7, h3? Or does he play bishop g5? Bishop g5 would be more consistent with the strategy of playing a more positional line. Looks like he wants to avoid complications. Speaking of avoiding complications, boo. Nah, just kidding. Board 2 has just drawn their game. I'm glad we didn't waste any time looking at this because this was a London system. Just like our World Championship game today, and the same result. So Theodoro-Nik Draw, which means Nico finishes his tournament on 7.5 out of 9. I'll see if he wants to make a quick appearance in the studio. Of course, you have to remember the players are essentially exhausted. But let me see. So, yeah, people are asking why he would take a draw. So let's just quickly run through the game. Okay, you don't need to see the empty board. Let's just go to the playing hall scene. This was a London system by Nico. Ilya playing, okay, one of the many, many available fashionable lines. Yeah, black seems to solve all his opening problems. Okay, really nothing to say here. After c3, a draw was agreed. Now, for Nico, this makes sense because he rounds off a fantastic event. He beat Fabi. He basically had good results every round. I mean, look at, he beat 2 international masters. He beat Mitrabaha in round 4. He beat Evan Park in round 5. This is Evan Park's only loss thus far. He beat Fabi in round 6, and then he makes 3 draws against 2,600 plus GMs to finish the tournament. Okay, Nizhnik is 2,560, but that's okay. He's criminally underrated. So his decision makes sense. Like, he doesn't want to take too much risk with white. If Fabi wins, that means Fabi wins outright. If Fabi wins, then Fabi wins the tournament with clear first. But Theodoro gains 19 FIDE points. For him, the money is important, but he's going to have a nice payday regardless. And he wants to sort of secure the rating gain. He doesn't want to lose the last round. His decision makes perfect sense. So I wouldn't take it too harshly on players. Just because of the exhaustion also of playing 2 rounds a day, facing strong opponents every game. This decision makes perfect sense. Let's look at board 3 and keep going around the horn because we've got other potentially pivotal games. Of course, everyone who is not named Fabiano Caruana is praying for Mark Hyman to score the upset of his life. This is board 3. And again, very unexpected pairing. You have Harsha Barakoti from India. I think he's a university student in St. Louis. And he faces Oparin. The prize pool, I can read it out to you a little bit later, but it's on the site. It's pretty hefty. I also will confirm the tiebreak rules. Like if Fabi draws his game, how is the prize money split? I don't think there's a playoff. I think it's shared, but I will confirm that for you momentarily. This was a Nimzo Indian. A3. Also for Theodoro, the more people who have 6.5 draw their game, the better for him. Because even if Fabi wins, players like Grigori Oparin can actually catch Nico Theodoro. So Oparin is trying to burn all his bridges playing for a win. This was a Rubinstein Nimzo. White playing A3. This is actually not the most popular move, as far as I know. Of course, Bishop D3 is the classical move, but Knight E2 is also very popular. A3 is a little bit more rare. It's kind of a cross between a Samish system and a Rubinstein. And Oparin playing a weird-looking move C6. This is actually not such a non-standard way of treating the position. But the point is, if black goes D5 right away, white can play CD, and black has to recapture the E-pawn. So the reason he plays C6 first is white cannot punish him by playing E4, of course. So white goes Knight F3 and D5 by Oparin. And my guess is that if white plays CD, black actually wants to recapture toward the center, C takes D5, and, essentially start to operate on the queen side and exploit some of white's weaknesses. I've seen people play like this, CD, CD, and then try to get rid of the other pawn with C4, but this could lead potentially to a structure that looks pretty for white, but I think black solves all of his problems here with B6 and then bishop B7, and it's a kind of a typical position that's usually evaluated as approximately equal. So instead, Barakoti playing A4, very positional move, presumably setting up bishop A3, but not necessarily. He also could just be sort of lobbing the ball back into Oparin's court and waiting for black to put his cards on the table. Now, the standard way for black to develop here is B6 followed by bishop A6. So it could also be a prophylactic measure. Barakoti could be preparing to meet B6 with A5. Very interesting. There is a playoff according to Caden. Okay, I actually don't know. Who won the Blitz yesterday, asks Alex. The Blitz tournament yesterday was, the first prize was shared by 3 players. Fabiano Caruana, Brewington Hardaway, and myself with 5.5 out of 6. No, I don't think Alex the Kiowan's mom was participating in the Blitz tournament, but to my knowledge, 3 players shared first place with 5.5 out of 6. I can talk about my own experience a bit later. So this actually might be Barakoti's idea. By the way, I'm happy to turn the eval bar back on if that's what people prefer in the chat. So right now we're doing kind of authentic old school commentary, but I defer to the audience. Your wish is my command. So we can do a little bit of both. Okay, no eval bar seems to be pretty popular. So my guess here would be A5 is being cooked up by Barakoti. If we look at Opening Explorer, we see 3 games with bishop A6. Pretty strong players. Jumabaya versus Erdos, also 2024. This looks like a very recent game. So, my guess would be the position's equal. B6, A5, bishop A6, hitting the C4 pawn. And, engine confirms it's equal. Black looks totally fine here. Knight D2 was the move played twice. One game, black responded Knight BD7, and I really like this move, Queen C8. Connecting the queen and the bishop. The problem for white is that if you open up the A file, it's not clear who this benefits, because the bishop on A6 is essentially invulnerable. And this whole jumble, I was going to say jambalaya of pawn. No, this whole jumble of pawns is not necessarily a strength, because black can start to, poke and prod at that weird pawn construction with the move C5. So this is another benefit of setting up kind of the semi-Slav construction, is that black has at his disposal the pawn break C5 when convenient, or also sometimes black goes for E6, E5. So very flexible pawn structure by Oparin. And when you look at his games, you actually can see, you can kind of sense that he works as a second for someone really strong, because his openings are absolutely incredible. Like, they blow you away. the extent of his knowledge in the opening is crazy. He always seems to get a good position, and that is indeed not a coincidence. He is, of course, Fabiano's friend and longtime second. Okay. So I'm expecting b6. Have any other moves been played? Yeah, 25 games actually with b6, so it's a very popular move. And a5 is actually not white's most common response. C takes d5 is the most common response, followed by bishop a3, followed by bishop b5. So white making a lot of tempo moves, forcing the bishop out to d7. And bishop back to d3. This seems to be what the cool kids play for white, but white does not score well in this position. I mean, you guys watching on stream don't see it, but the live audience sees that black seems to score very, very highly in this position. Knight c6. White castles most of the time. Yeah, and like I mentioned, e5 here, and I find it very hard to believe that, white is the one fighting for an advantage. Let's have a very quick look at, for the last time, at some of the games here. Esipenko, Nihal, Sarin. Okay, if Nihal's playing it with black, it must be good. Weirdly enough, like when I click, you can see that white has won some of the games. But then when you actually click on Opening Explorer, Queen a5 by Grigory Oparin. That is a novelty. Whoa. That was completely unexpected. He puts a queen on a5. Trying to make sense of this move. I'm not even sure he's threatening queen takes c3 check. I mean, maybe he wants to take that pawn. But, you do you, Mr. Oparin. I think it's less that he wants to take on c3 and more that he is trying to prevent white from developing in a way that he desires. So, like, if it were black to move here, Oparin might very well play a move like c5 or b6. But, like, the ball is currently in white's court, and now you can't really go bishop d3 because then black will take on c3. So it's more of a prophylactic move than an aggressive move because now white can't cover the check, you drop the bishop, or you drop the rook. Of course, white can consider the move bishop e2. But now he has to reckon very seriously with d takes c4 also. It occurred to me that this is also potentially a threat. And I really like the way Oparin plays. Queen a5, it looks awkward, and you don't see this move in the Nimzo Indian very often, but it actually makes perfect sense. So Barot probably will go queen c2. Probably he will go queen c2. One drawback of queen a5 that I see is that if you play the move b6 at the wrong moment, you might walk into bishop a3. And because of the threat of bishop b4, which would be devastating, you better be ready to meet that move with c5. And if black is not sufficiently developed, black might bite off more than he can chew. So clearly Oparin intends something very specific in response to queen c2. And I'm curious what it is. Knight e4, maybe a little bit artificial. He's not very developed. Maybe knight e4, but again, knight e4, maybe white just ignores with bishop d3. And you have to remember that just because white loses the c3 pawn, that's not the end of the story. White has a lot of positional assets that may be worth sacrificing a pawn for. So I really would be shocked if Oparin intends knight e4. Maybe knight bd7. Yeah, somebody in the chat is suggesting knight bd7. Maybe. Yeah, it's not a position that I would like to have without prep. And maybe after bishop d3, maybe now it's time to play b6. And maybe I'm saying maybe too many times, but it's just I'm really unsure which direction black wants to take the game in. And again, bishop a3, c5, really complicated structure. Now white can consider cd, black can respond with ed, and bishop c8 to a6 once again is in play. And a very important idea because the bishop on d3 is the sort of linchpin of white's entire structure here, just like in the London system, right? You want the bishop in between the pawns. Otherwise, what is the point of building this little, pawn TP if you're not going to control the light squares with the bishop? I'm even looking at bishop b4. Unfortunately, that move does not work. Black can take on d3. I like this for Grigory. It looks like he's gotten his opponent potentially under an hour before 10 moves have passed. Which, given the time control, which is 90 minutes plus 30-second increment for the whole game, is very significant. Good stuff by Oparin. We will see what Barot ends up doing here. But both of these players are I believe, on... Yeah, the standings. No, actually, Barakodi has 6 points out of 8, so he kind of needs to win. Oparin has 6.5. Okay, so the fact that Nizhnik... Yeah, actually, Theodoro's draw makes perfect sense, because Theodoro is saying, like, okay, if Fabi beats Mark Hyman stays on 6.5, and Theodoro would, barring a victory by Oparin with black, which is quite difficult against a solid GM, then he would have clear second. So a very practical decision by Nico. Then, of course, we have this big group of players with 6 points out of 8. They include Alexander Bortnik, who is definitely playing for a win here against Juraj Druška. He won in the morning, actually rebounding very, very nicely from a loss to Mark Hyman earlier in the tournament. Let's have a look at Bortnik here. So he again repeats this C6, D6, stuff. Hikaru would probably have a different description of this type of opening, but it makes sense. He avoids theory, and he gets kind of a Philidor-type position. I would say a cross between a Philidor and a Pirtz. Gets the other bishop out. Of course, the common wisdom does dictate that you develop the bishops before the knights. Bishop e3. And again, puts the queen on c7, just like you do in the Philidor. Knight f6. And, okay, this, I would say, looks more like a Pirtz. But we could, litigate the... which opening it's more similar to. That doesn't really impact the evaluation. So white secures the bishop pair. And Druška has driven his pawn up to a5 to grab, the maximum amount of squares. And to prevent this very common maneuver, knight b6. I mean, it's not a surprise here, I think, that white is probably slightly better, according to the computer. I have no doubt. It's probably like I would guess like 0.4, if I had to guess the evaluation. Let's actually check. Actually, it's equal, but if black does not find the precise line, at a low depth, it's like either black finds the precise sequence or it's like a slight edge for white. And it looks like the computer is prescribing takes. Yeah, b5. b5, that's not an easy move to play. Kind of forcing white to take on passant and then recapturing with the pawn. Okay, fair enough. And getting these 3 pawns in the 6th rank. Bortnik, however, is playing for a win, and he might decide that this is a little bit too drawish, because it opens up a line of, peace negotiations between the rooks, and then one pair of rooks comes off the board. If black plays knight e5, white might take on e5, and this might start heading very quickly for a draw after something like queen d6. So, I think Sasha himself mentioned it yesterday, that when you are the higher rated and you have to win, you're playing 2 opponents. You're playing your actual opponent, and you're playing the draw. You're playing the risk of choosing a variation that's too drawish, even if you know deep down that this is objectively the best line. So maybe Bortnik decides, I don't want to go b5, I want to go rook e8. And now, yeah, 0.4. This is kind of what I had in mind. Rook fd1. It can get a little bit unpleasant for black. Like, you have a weak pawn, white has the bishop pair, and it's hard for black to choose a plan here. As evidenced by the computer line, knight e5, bishop e2, knight e d7. That's not a good sign. So, I'm curious what Bortnik chooses here. He's very talented in these cramped positions. He's really good at finding ways to, to manufacture counterplay, sometimes at great risk to his position. But to beat a very solid IM with black, you need to take risks. That's just like chess in 2024. Sorry, Kelly, do I need to cooperate with... No, do I need to position myself properly? In my laptop. Okay, just let me know. Okay, so on board 4, we have Ishik Khan. Yeah, I really opened a can of worms by clicking on this position. And he faces Alexander Donchenko, who's had a bit of a frustrating sequence of games. He had a fantastic position against Evan Park, and he ended up having to, grovel for a draw one of the last games remaining. And then this morning, he had a great position against Theodoro, also wasn't able to squeeze home the full point. So now, 6 out of 8, he needs to win with black. And he's facing a very, very solid IM from Turkey, who I think might be securing a GM norm with a win. So this game is definitely not going to be a quick draw, and you can just tell by the position that both players are very happy to get something crazy. So Donchenko playing a Najdorf. Okay, so we're going to get a very old-school dogfight here. G6 in response to H3. Typically not recommended by, most courses because, you know, white, basically you get like this Dragadorf, which is the super official name for combining like the dragon and the Najdorf. And usually the computer disapproves of this, but, you know, right now the big priority for black is to get a combative position, knight c6. So we basically have like a mainline dragon, except usually white has a pawn on f3 instead of h3. And typically the reason for that is the e4 pawn is better protected. But the knight on c3 is not easy to dislodge. And black tries to dislodge it, but white beats him to the punch. g5. Very often you have to consider moves like b4, counterattacking white's knight. But I think Donchenko decided that simply queen takes c3, and he has to ruin his pawn structure completely. This looks horrible for black. Just horrible. So unfortunately for Alexander, he had to move the knight, allowing the bishop trade. White starts the procedure, so to speak, on the king side. I don't like black's position. Like visually, white's position looks fantastic. And I would even be considering the super thematic move h5 with white. This should not be a surprise to anybody who's looked at the Sicilian for more than 5 minutes that white often just throws this pawn away. And in fact, it is in black's best interest for this pawn to remain on the h-file as long as possible. Because if black plays knight takes h5, then bishop e2, and the knight on h5 is under fire. If you move it back to g7, it's time to, you know, invite the religious figure to start administering the last rites, because that rook is coming to h1. White can actually start pre-moving this. I mean, like, very often, white can sacrifice a copious amount of material. Probably not your queen. Probably not your queen, but something like queen d3 and rook takes h7 is coming. This is like an approximation. Maybe white has a more precise way of doing this, and white doesn't even have to sack the knight. Like, this is losing for black. Rook h1 is coming. So I'm very curious what Donchenko intends on h5. I would not rule out g takes h5. Again, you need to... it's like those movie scenes where, you know, someone's trying to break in the door, and whatever object is nearest the door, you need to, like, shove it to the door and buy yourself as much time as possible. So here, if white plays bishop e2, at least black has some time before white, you know, rams down the door on h5. What is black going to use that time to do? I mean, maybe rook c8, bishop takes h5. I don't know, queen a5 comes to mind as well, but I'm not seeing a way for Donchenko to start the engine here. So maybe I'm misevaluating this, or maybe I'm missing something specific against h5. But black's position looks pretty yucky to me. I would estimate like a +1 evaluation. Let's have a look. Okay, +1 is pretty accurate, but bishop e2. I mean, bishop e2, of course, also possible, but what is wrong with h5? Actually, wow. So, of course, typical Stockfish just eats the pawn and says, and laughs in my face. E5, of course. How could I overlook this obvious resource? E5, and the point is, yeah, I mean, just knight e6. It's not like you're getting mated or anything. Rook takes h7, and queen takes g5 just in time. Wow, and look at this. White has to play f4. That's an incredible move. f4 is an amazing move. The reason is the king runs out to f6, and because of the pin, black forces the queen trade and wins. Clearly, Donchenko has calculated this. So the reason white has to play f4 is because, okay, queen takes f4 looks natural, but now you check with this rook, and the king cannot run to f6 because of rook f1 skewering the queen. So black has to agree to the repetition of moves. This is not a good sign. Like, I made the first move that came to mind, and it looks like Donchenko would have to find a sequence of crazy moves to save the game. B4 also possible, but doesn't change much. I would predict h5 by Ishikkan. Pawn takes is even worse. Yeah, bishop e2 or king b1 simply. Just a quiet move. White doesn't have to hurry. White doesn't sacrifice anything. This is the thing. White has not sacrificed anything. And so has no obligation to burn all his bridges. He can just improve his position and then take the pawn at his leisure. So h5 is one possibility. And bishop e2 is the computer move. Of course, b4 is always met with knight d5 in these types of positions. Yeah, Donchenko, I don't want to overstate the case here. Like, I don't want to pretend that black is losing. But not what Donchenko intended out of the opening. And he's going to have to put on his A game and hope that white hesitates or does something very, very wrong here. Oh, h5 on the board. Perfect. Perfect timing. This is going to be a big game to watch. I'm super curious to see how Donchenko responds to this. Is he going to find all of these moves? I mean, I didn't see e5 at all. That was not on my radar. Yeah, GM norm chances for Ishikkan as well. I'll confirm that for you when I get a chance. Okay, should we go back to Caruana's game? We have some developments there. I also want to spotlight. Some of the lower boards. We already have some quick draws. Gleb Dudin on board 7. He drew Anthony Atanasov, 24-15 IM. Anthony, I don't think got a GM norm, but again, I'll verify all the norms separately. We might get Peter popping in, Peter Piper popping in to the studio to share all of the norm stats. Evan Park, of course, probably has guaranteed a norm regardless of results. Lots of interesting games that obviously are not contending for the top spot, but still, we want to do justice to some of the great performances. Brewington Hardaway tied for first in the Blitz event, along with Fabiano and some other dude. He faces a Wonder, the second seed of the tournament. And this was a pretty interesting opening. This was like an H3 4 knights, which is very fashionable. A Wonder fianchettoing his bishop. And typically white is supposed to have a slight edge in these types of positions. Queen F3, Knight D7, very creative approach by a Wonder, Knight E5, obviously. The Blitz event, of course, was FIDE rated. Everybody played. I mean, Fabi played, lots of GMs played. And it was a really fun atmosphere. It did go pretty late, though. And the morning round was at 10 a.m., 30 minutes earlier than the usual morning rounds. Okay, so this is the current position. I'm liking what Brewington has here. What he has brewing, shall we say. Black has the bishop pair, yes, but white has very active pieces. Black has quite a shoddy structure. And Brewington could reposition his queen if he wanted to. Why is the eval bar on? I promise to keep it off. Bishop h6 is sort of an idea, as well as bishop to f6. Yeah, I mean, it's probably a slight edge for white here. Also a move like rook a to c1, x-ray the c7 pawn. Yeah, Wonder has had a hard time with the black pieces this tournament. He's overdid it a couple times. Bishop b7, for instance. I don't know. Rook fe1. Like, white doesn't even have to show any kind of originality here, I think, to maintain a good position. I really do like this queen h4 idea at the right moment to set up these twin ideas of bishop f6 and bishop h6. I would predict a draw. If I had to, like, predict a result at this point, I think wide open center. You know, our Wonder's the higher rated player. Brewington, of course, a GM elect as of a couple months ago. Really, really talented, hardworking player. Very young, but he's, as far as I can tell, very well-rounded. Doesn't have any obvious weaknesses in his game. Let's go back to Fabiano's game, because lots of moves are being played here. We don't want to miss the fun action. And amazingly, bishop takes a7 was played. So Hyman going straight into the sharpest possible line, just trying to punish Fabiano's pawn sacrifice. I was expecting bishop g5. But it's hard to even notice the existence of bishop g5 when there's such a juicy little morsel on a7. And Hyman maybe didn't have time for lunch, because h3 was Nigmatov versus Gladura, which I did spotlight. White gave away the pawn, so gave back the pawn. However, maintained the integrity of his structure. Hyman says, no, I'm keeping my extra pawn. And instead, of course, he gets this clunker of a central pawn structure. Fabi develops bishop e7. Brings out his other bishop. Hyman solidifies his pawn chain. Bishop to d3. And bishop h4 check. Sorry, bishop h4 check first by Caruana. Very common type of idea where a weakness is provoked. You also see this sometimes where white goes like bishop h7 check, forces the king to the corner, and then returns. Here it's a more concrete idea. Like, clearly black is forcing a pawn weakness. And in the future, black could run his h-pawn up the board, I think. Maybe this is even Fabi's idea in response to short castles. Like, maybe Fabi doesn't even want a castle. He wants to go h5. I'm not, asserting that that is necessarily the case, but certainly black's king appears to be quite safe in the center. I also really like the way the rook is placed. It's protecting f7, and it's slowing down the progress of white's 8-pawn. And if white dilly-dallies for too long, like if white plays, I don't know, bishop c2 to prepare a4, like, you just don't have much time. I mean, white could get checkmated here really quickly. And hg, this just looks awful for white. I mean, rook h3 is coming in. I mean, against John Michael Berg, Fabi had a very similar idea that won the game where the king is lifted up and the queen slides in along the h-file. This looks like it's going to be a barn burner. And if Hyman isn't careful, his barn might be the only one that burns. So I'm not even sure he wants to castle short. I would even consider long castle, honestly. The moment I saw h5, I'm like, I'm getting away from there. But long castle is suddenly not totally out of the question. It might be just a little bit out of the question. No, I think it's totally... I mean, no. There's no way. Because here, black's going to go queen a5, bring the rook into the game. As, you know, the lower-rated player, you're too scared to do something like this. And it's probably a terrible idea. White's entire, you know, reason for being is to eventually send the a-pawn up the board. You don't want to castle to that same side. So where is Hyman going to go with his king? Like, if he's not castling king side or queen side, staying in the center has its own risks, and queen b6 is beckoning. So no, I think he has to go kingside, and I think he might have to go h4. But that has its own problems, like bishop h6, and as a Sveshnikov player, Fabi loves putting his bishop on this diagonal. Honestly, black's position is growing on me quite a bit. Because now g5 is a huge problem. And again, like when you analyze these positions with an engine, it doesn't... Like, you don't get that same sense of danger. Like, Hyman might be terrified right now. He might be like, wait a second, am I going to get mated? What did I get myself into? But I think everybody can see how dangerous this can be. So, what would I actually do with white? Well, that's why I'm not playing the tournament, so that I don't have to answer these types of questions. Now, I would consider something drastic like c5. Just try to, at all costs, shift the focus, black's focus to a different side of the board. But this might not be beneficial to white, because black could even play dc. Fabiano, I mean, I wouldn't go d5, because then e takes d5, and white gets, like, 3 uncontested passers on the queen side. And maybe black can just totally ignore and play h4. Like, black's attack comes so fast that white is potentially unable to create sufficient, like, distracting counterplay. Black just, like, pre-moves all of these moves. It might be the case that, like, specifically here after king g2, black would really love to play rook b7 to h7, but there's some trees you have to chop down for that to happen. Ooh. I mean, Hyman has had an amazing tournament, but he's dodged some bullets along the way, and Fabi's just not going to miss this opportunity if he gets a promising position. He's got the 2800 World Championship experience, and he's much calmer than his opponent right now, even though he potentially has more to lose. Let's check the assessment. I'm just too curious. Probably it's going to show... Yeah, actually, I mean, h4, top move. That is not a good sign. If, like, h4 right away, Hyman has played it. Okay, that's why he's on board 1. h4 played, but okay, bishop h6. I don't think this solves any of white's problems. Castles, yeah, g5, exactly. So, whew. h5, g4. Oh, and showing a slight edge for black. Queen coming to g5. Yeah, if the computer gives equality when one side is up a full pawn, it's not a great sign. And black doesn't have to hurry. As a Sveshnikov player, Fabi also might consider the other pawn break, g6 and f5. No, I don't like short castles. The computer move is bishop e2. Yeah, bishop e2 and g4. So basically, like, I'm going to be the one who knocks on the king side. Also, the more the engine sits, the better the evaluation for black after something like g6. No, Hyman's not going to go g4 here. That's insane. Like, Fabi just castles. And amazing, like, the computer line now is long castle. Queen a5. No, this looks like a trash fire waiting to happen. I don't like it. I do like that he played h4. I think maybe this is the lesser evil. But again, as a Sveshnikov player, and I keep repeating this because in his match with Magnus Carlsen, Fabi's main weapon against 1e4 was the Sveshnikov. Carlsen, of course, also an expert in that opening. And in the Sveshnikov, like, the bishop often chills on g5 or on h6, and the f7, f5 pawn break is standard fare. So it's not that bishop back to e7 is such a bad idea, but black is no longer worried about the d6 pawn getting attacked. White lacks a dark squared bishop. White lacks the machinery to attack that pawn. Okay. Oh, did I confuse? Maybe it was Magnus who played the Sveshnikov? But Fabi has definitely also played the Sveshnikov, if I'm not mistaken. In either case, like, he knows about the existence of, or the power of a bishop that just, like, chills on h6, especially when there's a long-term target that he attacks. Yeah, not what the doctor ordered here for Mark Hyman. Not what the doctor ordered. Fabi takes his time here, doesn't rush. Yeah, Fabi himself with white, of course, has played the Rosalimo, but he's also got into the topical open Sicilian lines. Just super, super well prepared. Okay, so we'll wait for his decision. I want to check out the board 3 game as well, and then I want to spotlight a couple of the lower boards that we haven't had a chance to look at just yet. A lot of draws. I mean, board 15, Shlaktenko with versus Vasquez is a draw. Board 13, Samrug Narayanan versus Zhu Jinchao, draw. Exhausting tournament, Putnam versus Antipov, draw on board 19. And you really cannot blame anybody for a quick draw in the last round of tournament that's this grueling. Okay. So let's look at board 3 very quickly here, as Barot is eating into his clock. He's almost down to half his time. And indeed, we do have a pawn appearing on c5. So we saw the move queen a5. I was praising this move. Queen c2 was played. And Oparin actually playing c5 on his own volition. So he did not wait for white to play like bishop a3. He played it right away. And he followed it up with knight a6 rather than b6. Whoa. Very creative treatment of the position for black. But definitely quite suspect. I think white might have a way to poke holes in this. My immediate question would be c takes d5. What is Oparin intending here? Maybe Oparin's wondering that too. Now, knight takes d5 is rare in the Nimzo Indian. Like, you don't usually recapture this way, but maybe here this is a valid option because c3 is under fire. However, bishop takes a6 has to be calculated. And black just, I think, drops the c5 pawn. I'm not picking up what Oparin is putting down. Maybe he wants to sack the pawn, and he's saying the light squares will serve as compensation. But no, here bishop takes c5, and then white's going to play c4, shutting down the diagonal, and white will be able to castle. So no, I don't think that's the idea. I think he is intending ed. Or maybe he's... No, cd just gives up the rook on f8. That's not good. So probably ed. Okay, and now it makes sense. Bishop takes a6. I think this idea is much better with a pawn on d5, because in a situation like this, white can't easily go c4. He might still make that move in order to castle, but at the very least, he'll have to pay back the pawn. It's a hard position to assess. Like, white could go queen e2. I don't think white could possibly be worse here, but I also don't think Oparin would be too worried here. b6, for example. And even in an endgame, it's not that white is at risk of getting checkmated, but just look at black's light square control. Like, black's going to put a knight on e4, rook on c8. And the problem with the king being in the center is not that, again, the king is in danger. It's that white's rooks are not coordinated. So this is, I think, what Oparin is going for, a positional pawn sacrifice. And honestly, I think Barot might want to try to squeeze more out of the position than just that. Somebody in my chat is asking, can he go knight e5? Probably he should do it without taking on d5. Yeah, knight e5 looks like a totally valid move here as well. Just keep the tension, make it hard for black to develop. I'm not sure about Oparin's c5. I think maybe that was a little premature. Maybe knight e4 now? Just copycat chess? Yeah, I mean, again, like, if you put yourself in the player's shoes, like, they're... I mean, how do you figure out what's going on here? Like, you can stare at the position for 30 minutes and get absolutely nowhere. Like, should white defend the c-pawn? Should white take on d5? Should white go f3? I'm very good at asking questions that I don't know the answers to. I mean, like, in a blitz game, my instinct would be to push f3, actually, which I'm sure is the wrong move. I can guarantee you that. But the point would be, like, knight takes c3, queen d2, trying to trap black's pieces on the queen side. You know, the engine often in these situations suggests some very normal-looking move, like bishop d3, and retroactively, it's always easy to apply logic. And of course, like, white just develops his pieces, but when you look with an engine, you, like, don't appreciate how many other tempting options there were, because, like, the path is illuminated in front of you. Like, even rook c1, a lot of people would play just to, like, defend this pawn. Maybe also reasonable. And how much do you want to bet the computer move is probably none of these? And probably knight e4 will get laughed out of the room as well. So I like the suggestion by Just Me Out. Yeah, knight e5. Just centralize the knight. Ignore any of the temptations to win a pawn, because I think white cashes in too soon. Also, note this variation, b6, knight c6, the queen is trapped. Whoops. Forgot about that. And look at how all of black's pieces are, like, clustered together. Traffic jam at 5 o'clock. Actually is 5 o'clock. Okay. I think Nico is tired. He's gonna go get some rest. Much more important. Maybe later, but we'll see. We'll definitely get somebody into the studio. Definitely Fabi, I think, if he wins. I'll try to lead him to the commentary room. Okay, Hyman played bishop e2. Yeah. Oh wow, he actually is preparing this g4 idea, so he's making all the money moves apparently. But still, I'm still skeptical. Like, even if he finds all of the computer moves, like, it still didn't look good. But pretty impressive stuff by Hyman. Okay, 42 minutes for Barot. This is the thing. Like, Oparin is trying to make the position complicated. He's playing very fast. He plays very fast in blitz as well. That's his style. And white needs to make a decision here pretty quickly. Knight e5. I really, really like the move knight e5. If white just plays a regular developing move, maybe you're allowing Oparin to play bishop d7 and hit the a4 pawn. So, not a big fan of a move like bishop d3. All right. So, what else can we look at in the meantime? Yeah, board 12, Jacobson versus Budisavljevic is an edge for Jacobson. Daniel Fernandez is having a great event. He defeated a wonder, but he lost very convincingly to Oparin in the last round. Board 4, let's have a quick look-see. Yes, Donchenko did take the pawn on h5. Nerves of steel by the German GM. So maybe he does see e5. Maybe he does see e5. So bishop e2, this is what I looked at just very, very roughly. Knight g7, rook h6. This is board 4. Both players on 6 out of 8. And here, apparently, the only saving move is e5. They're going down the line, bishop e2 on the board. Rook h1, knight e6. And white simply is not in time to checkmate the black king by a single tempo. Amazing. Bishop e2 played. I mean, Donchenko has to go knight g7, I would presume. Because, again, b4 does not play into black's hands. Like, white goes knight d5. And this trade, yeah, it decreases the total material on the board. But also, like, it creates a hanging pawn on b4 and a quick pathway for the white queen to get to h4. Apparently, Ishik only needs a draw for the GM norm. So, Donchenko playing for a win. He wants the prize, especially after 2 frustrating results. But black, I mean, would love a draw here. And if Ishik thinks he's mating, he's not just going to offer a draw. Like, this is not the psyche of someone who is over 2,500 FIDE. I think he's very confident in his ability to not lose this position. But if Donchenko finds, like, knight g7 and if white plays rook h6, we might go down that line. Rook h6 is not forced, by the way. White maybe has a more violent intention. Maybe knight d5. Yeah, actually maybe knight d5. Preventing e5. But then black could take. And if white is too slow, yeah, black could still play e5. And if white's attack fizzles out, white is down a pawn. Like, that seems to be an irrelevant statement, but it is going to become important if white's attack does not succeed. So I really am I mean, your hand is just playing rook h6. That's just like the move everybody wants to play. By the way, if you try to get your queen to the h-file... Oh, b4 played by Donchenko. Okay, so he does play b4. He does play b4. I would offer a draw as black. If I knew my opponent needed a draw for a GM norm, I would be desperate enough to offer a draw here. Like, I would hate my position to such a degree. So knight d5 I think will happen, and then, yeah, maybe Donchenko is just, like, trying to exchange as many pieces as possible. Yeah, so 2499 is his pre-tournament rating. He's going to cross 2500 even with a loss, I have no doubt. So, obviously, that's not what he's aiming for. He's aiming for the points. Okay. Barakoti is still thinking. He's at 38 minutes against Oparin, flirting with disaster. You better make the right decision. Let's have a look at board 5. Druska versus Bortnik. Okay, this is looking kind of equal-ish. Bortnik playing very quickly, trying to play the clock as well as the opponent. Makes perfect sense. I mean, he has the black pieces against a very solid IM. I think Druska was over 2,500 very recently. Welcome to the US. Yeah, I think Bortnik has done a good job here. Like, he did take on d4. He won rook e8, just as I predicted. And now he starts to put some pressure on this pawn. Druska looks like he's not opposed to a draw. Bishop g4. Takes. Trading a bunch of pieces. a6 just played. Just fixing this pawn on a5. And I think black's next move is like rook a8 pre-move. Super tempting to double the rooks and keep pressuring the c4 pawn. Of course, white could play f3 and protect everything, but that's a fairly weakening move. And the slightly worrying thing is that this a5 pawn is a long-term weakness. The more pawns you push, the more you overextend yourself, and eventually you might accidentally walk into a move like d6, d5, especially if this rook is abandoned by the queen. Yeah, if I had to give an assessment, I think this is equal, but in a positive way for black, unless white has some like very quick rook e3, rook h3 action, which I don't think he does. Yeah, equal. So f3 is the top move. Rook e8. No, this is a very positive trend for Bortnik. Like, he was slightly worse. White seems to be playing very conservatively, trying to trade pieces, and this is not the recipe to make a draw, as everybody knows, if you're the lower-rated player. Yeah, g5, kind of a vague move. f6 I really like by black, trying to get the knight into the game. No, definitely, like, if white is careful, he should not lose this game. But he's thinking a lot. Maybe Druska doesn't feel too hot about his position here. We'll see. But does seem to be, okay, slight edge for white, but I don't really believe that. From a human perspective, I think black is very comfortable here. Okay, so let's remove the crutches here. We're doing some old school commentary today. All right. What else do we have? Board 6. Haven't looked at it yet. Tokarjonova, she won her previous game against Brodsky. She defeated Brodsky with black. Kevlishvili has had a good event as well. Yeah, Tokarjonova is on 6 out of 8. Again, don't pay attention to like the Chess.com event scores. Obviously, she hasn't taken 7 or 6 buys. That's not permitted. It would be nice if you could do that and take 6 half-point buys on demand. Okay, what's going on here? This is some sort of very, very sharp Sicilian. This is too crazy for the last round. English attack, h5, of course, very fashionable. This has sort of been the main line now for a couple years. Okay, bishop e2 and f4. I assume this is theory. Maybe not. Yeah, no games after rook c8. Black kind of fixes these pawns. Deep freeze, f5. Unbalanced structure. Yeah, just a very hard position to grasp. Like, who is better here? As a Nine-Dwarf player, I like Black's position. He's got the G-file. At the same time, it's very, very risky. Like, you push one pawn at the wrong moment and everything can collapse. I do like Kevlishvili's position in terms of, like, his potential, because Rook is on a semi-open file. He's got, of course, like, if D5 is well-timed, it could be very dangerous for White. I think this is why White is bringing her forces to the center. She's anticipating that that's where the party's going to be. So yeah, what if Black plays Queen C6, there's Knight A5. It's a really annoying move. And Black could probably make a draw. Queen C7, Knight B3, I think, is forced. But definitely she wouldn't mind a draw, I think. Kevlishvili, he might... No, B6 hangs A6. Yeah, it's kind of hard for Black to figure out a good setup for the pieces. Like, no matter which move you play, there seems to be some random move to chase the piece back to its initial square. Yeah, maybe just Bishop E7, honestly. Maybe just Bishop E7. Just make a developing move. Pass the ball back to your opponent. And, you know, also not easy for White to break down this pawn construction. Like, where are White's pieces eventually going? If White plays A5, then Queen C6 becomes possible. And D5 becomes a very serious threat. So much so that even if White plays Rook D2, like, sometimes you could still play D5 because of Black's contact with the C2 pawn. Like, if, for example, if we go down this line, yeah, I'm not sure that White is much worse, but this is definitely quite scary. Yeah, pretty good good start for Kevlishvili. I think he's gotten a position that affords clear winning chances with Black, and if he wins, he moves to 7 out of 9. There will definitely be a pretty big group with 7 out of 9, no question about it. Unless everybody with 6 draws. All right. So apparently, this is the first time where the winning score of Queen C6 played. Okay, so I think he's going to repeat the moves once. Unless I'm missing something after... Is there another move after Knight A5? Is there another move for Queen? Oh, I mean, you could blunder your Queen. Always available option. No, I think he wants to repeat once and sort of test White's intentions, which can be a smart move. Just like see... you know, what your opponent's mindset is. And, you know, psychologically, you kind of signal to your opponent who the boss is when you repeat once and then are like, nope, no repetition a second time. Of course, like, this is not the main factor. Both players are very experienced. Ultimately, good moves decide the game rather than psychology. Maybe Knight A5, no, there's no way. E4 just looks suicidal with a Rook on E1. Yeah, no. I think Knight A5 will trigger repetition. So for Tokujono, she's like, okay, is there a better move than Knight A5? Maybe Queen C6 gives White a special opportunity that she doesn't want to miss by repeating the position. I think 6.5 might get you a very small prize at best. So this is the first time in US Masters history, we're being told, that the winning score is higher than 7 out of 9. There we go, Knight A5. And multiple people actually might get it. So Fabi, with a draw or a win, will have at least 7.5. Theodoro has already guaranteed it with a draw 7.5 out of 9. Pretty incredible stuff. There we go. Repeat once and Bishop E7. Following Feingold's advice, always repeat. And he already planned this when he played Queen C6. He planned to play Bishop E7 here. So Kevlishvili believes both in psychology and in good moves. Harsha Barakoti still thinking on board 3. He's down to 30 minutes after like 10 moves. Yeah, I think he's changing his last name to Harsha Grishakati. Let's check in on board 1 very quickly here because this is the deciding game. If Fabi wins, he wins outright with 8 out of 9. Okay, so Fabi, White playing the computer line, H4 and Bishop E2, potentially preparing G4. Hyman has clinched a GM norm, apparently. Wow. What a dream. Like, you clinch a GM norm, you get to play Fabi. Yeah, he's living the life. No question about it. Of course, that doesn't mean he just wants to lose. It would be even more of a dream to, you know, scalp Fabi for at least half a point. That's a ton of rating. I don't know how many norms he has, but clearly he must be at least close to the GM title. Amazing. Apparently, even if he loses, he exceeds the norm by half a point. Like, that's how good this guy played. But that's what happens when you defeat two GMs rated over 2,600 or almost 2,600. He also defeated Parhov in round 7. Yeah, just an incredible event. I don't think he's lost a single game. And his rating gain is probably higher than what it says on chess.com, like probably like close to 30 points. He might be close to 2,500. That might be another boon for him. But let's look at this last move. Queen b6. So Fabi's saying, I'm not going to let you play g4. He simply abandons the d6 pawn. I also don't think White can even consider taking it. This might get him kicked out of the tournament. Just kidding. Queen takes d6. I don't even want to look at it. There's no way this is occurring on the board. Of course, I've said that before, and often before the move appears. But rook d7, just like, I mean, White is taking a lot of pawns, but Black is going to be taking a lot of pieces once the bishop lands on d4. No, this is out of the question. So White needs to defend this pawn. How is he going to do it? Is he going to go king f2? That puts the king right in the line of fire of a rook. So Fabi might be salivating at the prospect of f5. Okay. Knight d1 looks very passive. Wait, what are we missing here? Because this was not supposed to be a winning move for Black. So what am I missing after queen b6? Maybe knight d1 is the move. Maybe this is the move. But this is a very hard move to get yourself to play, because basically this shuts down the prospect of castling queenside. And actually, maybe what you do is you go king f2, short castle, and g4. So White sets up like the triple Marozzi bind, preventing like d5 and preventing f5. But Fabi could try to like push this through with g6. Now White could play g5. But then once the bishop retreats, yeah, this is one way to fianchetto your bishop. Bishop went from f8 to e7 to h4 to g5 to h6 to g7. And again, f5 becomes a very serious possibility. On the positive side, e3 is no longer in critical condition. So you could go king g2, get the king to a relatively safe spot. And you could argue that f5, first of all, d6 will hang after f5. And here, actually, White might consider capturing it, because e6 is now hanging with check. So maybe Fabi would want to invest a tempo in a move like rook d7. And this gives White more time to, marshal the troops on the f-file. Yeah, I actually think this might be it. This actually might be what White does, king f2. Because knight d1 is ultra passive. Ultra passive, and d5 then becomes a possibility. Like if he goes knight d1 and Fabi goes rook d7, d5 is a huge threat, just blasting the center. Okay. Sure. So Hyman is thinking. By process of elimination, I think you have to go king f2, and he just played it. He just played king f2. He's playing really well. I mean, White is solving so far, like the problems that Fabi is posing. Hyman is demonstrating that he's on top. He's on top of the situation. He understands like the importance of keeping his pieces relatively active, and bishop e2 was very impressive. Like I'm not giving this enough the praise that it deserved. Bishop e2 shows that he understands the position. He understands like f5 is Black's main idea. He needs to be ready to play g4. Even though g4 is a scary move to play against someone not named Fabiano Caruana. So, okay, Fabi castles, White plays g4. Fabi doesn't have to castle. He could also play... Actually, Black has many moves. Black has rook d7. Black can play king e7. Say, let's dance. The delayed 19-move bonk cloud. But yeah, no, castle short is very, very natural for Black. Let's have a quick look-see. Oh, queen d8. No, that's not happening. No, this is happening. This is happening. I think we're going to go down the line I just looked at. The computer, of course, if you let it sit for a bit. Okay, so I was looking at king g2. And according to the computer, queen to d8 is very, very strong. Because Black is now preparing to play f6 and just open up the king side, so you need all your pieces ready to join the fight on the king side. Rook d1, rook d7. One negative for white is that you have not managed to even move the pawn 2 squares up. Like, this was the whole point of grabbing that pawn. That passed a pawn is just still sitting there. So here, my instinct with white would be like to go rook... Nope, sorry. Rook df1. Wow, look at this move. h5. And it's a positional move. It's a very positional move. The point is, you don't want to take en passant and re-involve the bishop. If you make a random move, black plays f6. Oh, rook df7 here is beautiful. And at the end of the day, once black recaptures, the h4 pawn is going to be a fixed long-term weakness. So black is playing both tactically and positionally. But Fabi, he finds moves like these for breakfast. He loves these pawn moves. In general, he's pushed his a-pawn like at seemingly random moments almost every game this tournament, if you take a look at his games. So this is right up his alley. Yeah, I really am in love with h5. Such an instructive idea. Fixing the target on h4. Yeah, badass move. And f6 is coming next. Okay, so I'm expecting short castles. And things are going to get crazy here. Things are going to get crazy. And Fabi has, what have his mistakes been this tournament? Mostly on a tactical front. If you think about it, right, like he's made a few blunders against Theodoro. He missed that golden opportunity. Tactical. Even against Ambergy round 1 was not an easy game. He hasn't had any easy games. He missed forced win right out of the opening. Tactical. In round 2, he blundered a pawn. So from a positional standpoint, from a preparation standpoint, it's been perfect. Like, his openings have been awesome. Like, the fact that he's managed to get a fight with the black pieces every game just displays the depth of his preparation going into the tournament. He prepared the French. Last round, I think the Taimanov was a perfect choice. So he hasn't been perfect, but positionally and from a game plan standpoint, he's done great. He's also gaining rating, which is pretty wild. He's really silencing the like, why is Fabi playing an open tournament crowd? Really willing his way to victory in round 7 against Woodward. Crazy game. This was, of course, a big turning point in the tournament. This is his round 7 game against Woodward. Andy blunders this beautiful tactic. Hopefully people were watching last night. I was commentating with Bortnik. So Fabi wins a pawn. Andy wins it back, but at great cost to his position. Then Fabi thinks for 48 minutes and plays bishop a6 to c8. I could not help asking Fabi if there was any inspiration behind the move, and indeed, this was on his mind. But bishop c8 was the third best move. I mean, rook takes d2, he overthought it. And this was offered great winning chances. Instead, bishop c8 let white back in the game. Andy with some beautiful defense. He did everything perfectly, did Andy Woodward, until the very last move. Like, he had to find one more move to make a draw. And that move was rook to b4 in this rook endgame. But much easier said than done after like 3 hours of defending. This was the drawing line. This was the drawing line for Andy Woodward, and one extra pawn is not enough here. Instead, Andy, he went king f4, attacking the pawn with his king. And what he missed was... what did he miss? He missed something. There was some, like, rook b2 resource at the right moment. Oh, yeah. King e3 here. Or, sorry, h4 in this position. It's, like, the same line, except black has this devastating resource, rook b2. Targeting white's rook on b6. And this wins the game because black is able to squeeze the pawn into f2. So this is what Andy had missed. He was forced to give up a second pawn. And Fabi ends up winning the game. So he wins round 7. He beats Matvishin this morning. And he recovers beautifully from his loss against Theodoro. Rook d7 played. Okay. Sensible move. I mean, I pointed this out. I was expecting Fabi to just castle, but clearly he is hinting at the presence of d5 in the right position. Thank you. Okay. Norm report. Okay. No, they need to lose in order to get the norm. Yeah, so I still expect g4. I don't think this necessarily changes the nature of the position. I'm a little surprised. I don't think rook d7 was necessary. I think castles was more important. So I get the norm report here. Let's see. Ishikkan needs a draw. Let's have an update on... Ooh. Whoa. This is wild. He needs a draw against Donchenko. So what happened here? e6, rook takes h5. Clearly intending knight f6 check. This was not to Donchenko's liking, can't blame him. So he took the knight instead, and indeed, as I was illustrating, a rook appears on h6. And look at this trick. DE. Holy smokes. Wait a second. Rook h1. Oh, e3. Unbelievable. And then it's, for a second, I thought, oh, white can go rook h7. And then I thought, okay, if black takes the queen, it's checkmate. First of all, black takes the queen, it's a check. This is why you want to go king b1 preemptively. Second of all, even if you didn't have that, you could, you know, cut the legs off out of the attack with bishop takes h1. God, nerves of steel for Donchenko. Yeah, I think I just saw him in the prayer room. Because, like, I mean, rook h1 is not white's only way of prosecuting this attack. So my question here would be, what if white just, you know, sticks a queen on e3, blockading the pawn? Is this enough time for white to get the rook to h1? Yeah, what does black do again? Wait a second. So rook h1 is on deck. Okay, I guess king g7 is the standard way. Wait a second. Rook h7, king h7, queen h3, king g8, rook h1, queen g5, queen g1. Wait, I think that's mate. Rook h7 takes, queen h3. So obviously king g7 walks into queen h6, so king g8, but still rook h1. And even though g5 is eliminated, there's two... Ah, no, king g7 at the end, and the king, using its own 2 feet, escapes the... Okay, wow. Incredible line. So king g7 escapes. But obviously white is not obligated to sack a rook. I was just testing the brute force options. Must be winning for white here, I think. Must be winning. I mean, you don't even need anything flashy. Like, for example, wait a second. Here. What about rook h1? Rook h8, queen d4, king g8, queen h8. Yes. Rook h7, rook h8, and rook h7 checkmate. Typical pattern. How would you like to end the tournament that way if you're Ishikkan? So after queen d4, can't do any better than that. I want to say it's pronounced Chan, but I'm not sure. I think that means life in Turkish, but I also don't know where I'm getting this from. gf6, this is winning, so this is actually a pivotal line. Wait a second, queen e3. No joke. Joking aside, what is black's move? I have no doubt that Donchenko has a defense planned here. There's no way he has gone into this and he's just like, queen e3, I'm going to resign. Maybe queen e3. Queen e7, I thought briefly. But then f6, white can still take on h7. So before we involve our silicon friend here. Yeah, but rook h1, e3, queen d5, like, the rook will still be hanging. f5 is being proposed by someone. f5. And you want to go rook f7, okay. So let's say white doubles. What now? I guess rook f7 and bishop c4, d5. Okay. Something tells me this is maybe the only move. Wow. Also, white has 39 minutes. So, like, what happens in these situations? First of all, white is very nervous. He basically becomes a GM. This is his third norm. Not basically. He becomes a GM with a draw. And, you know, don't forget the nerves. Like, everything takes you longer to calculate. Queen d4 always walks into this. This is what's nasty about it for white. Here, you always give up g5 with check. So, okay. So, wait a second. Yeah, that's the problem with queen d4, what people were suggesting. So I guess f5 here is intended. Oh, Mr. Theodoro is in the chat. What about bishop c? I can't tell if, now I can't tell if you're being serious. Bishop c8, very interesting. For a second, I thought it was a serious suggestion. Then I saw who was... Yeah, just offer a draw. Say, I'm being merciful. Move has been played. It's queen f4, very similar. He's gone queen f4, so same exact idea, right? He's getting the queen away from the move e3. Now, the downside is he is still allowing, in some circumstances, Donchenko to play e3. But e3 in any position, white can just go f3 if white really wants the h1 square. So let's first of all test f5. But here white can go rook d6. Oh my gosh, this has to be winning. Look at, I mean, there's like a million mates that I see. Bishop c4. If you want to taunt your opponent, you could even sack this rook, which is not necessary. And in fact, it's really stupid because of king h8, but I'm just... Like, white doesn't even need any rooks. This is quite the mating construction. Whoa, mistake by Mark Hyman. We'll look at it in a second. Thank you for letting me know. Just a moment. We gotta get the truth of the position here with the engine. I'm assuming black has a defense here. I just feel this cannot just be made. It never is that easy. In my experience, yes, f6 only move. Queen e3 and queen f4, so I'm going to give ourselves a pat on the back here. Well, bishop h5. Yeah, here, like, depth 26 is not enough. You got to let Stockfish sit. So anyways, this is going to remain behind the scenes. f6 only move. That is not easy to play. Oh my gosh, rook h1. fg. Look at this defense, queen h2. And you have to see rook f4... and rook h4 intercepting, like, the Alekhine's... Actually, this is not Alekhine's gun, and this is why Alekhine's gun is good. If the queen and the rook were switched, this would not be as effective. Holy smokes. And white still keeps going. Like, takes, queen back to f4. Still a nightmare for black to hold. So queen f4, f6. And white has, like, a million moves here. Rook takes d6 would be my instinct in, like, a blitz game. Queen c7 only move. gf, bishop d5 only move, getting the bishop around to f7. I mean, if Donchenko holds this, I think Bobby should just give away the, the first place trophy. And Ishikkan is going to, keep him away from those hotel rooms because, yeah, I would not be a happy camper if this is how I was robbed of my third GM norm. Wow. Okay, but f6 has to be found, and f5, as I mentioned, rook d6 wins the game. So black basically has to find f6. But by process of elimination, if you play queen e7 instead, that doesn't do anything. And like I said, e3, white has this resource, f3. Blocking off the bishop, and rook h7 is inevitable. In fact, you can essentially pre-move it. Wow, this is a huge moment. Now, yeah, this is a game that... absolutely deserves lots of analysis. And if you want to develop your tactical understanding, spend 30 minutes analyzing without the computer, and then, have ample whiteout. I don't know if anybody uses whiteout anymore, but have it at hand and just, like, turn on the computer and be prepared to cross everything out. Because, yeah, even the engine struggles in this position, just because of the abundance of resources. Let's look at board one, because I was told that Hyman's last move was a mistake. Yeah, Donchenko will find f6. There's nothing else to do. There's process of elimination is so powerful. And this sucks for Ishikkan, as he's down, like, below 40 minutes. And, we're enjoying white's position, but he's probably just wants this game to end. So let's go back to our board one cam. Fabi is the only one at the board. Okay, so g4 was played. g6, the automatic response. And now not g5. Rook ag1. Okay, so both of Hyman's rooks are in closed files. Now, why is this a mistake? I'm going to trust chat, which is maybe a mistake, but people have been on their best behavior. Well, let's try to figure it out on our own, and then we'll look at the engine, because... Rook f1 was more natural to my eyes. Yeah, Rook f1 was more natural because once you step away with the king, you are obviously preparing to meet f5. I'm not sure I just understand the logic of this move. Like, why can't black just castle here? Does he want this? Maybe he wants this, bishop g4. Like, at first I'm trying to understand what is Hyman thinking. I think it's this. However, let's see. I'm trying to calculate a little bit here. God forbid. Yeah, so if white can trade off some pieces, this definitely makes black's attack less scary. Yeah, maybe this is what he wants. So f5 en passant, rook f6. Sadly, you have to go back to the center. And now, of course, if black tries to double, white will take the bishop. So black should trade here and then probably double. And maybe Hyman calculated something like this. Rook g2. It does not look terrifying for white anymore. And white actually is now ready to play h5. And remember, white is up a pawn, which becomes significant with less pieces on the board. Okay, so wait a second. Yeah, this starts to make sense to me. Rook g1, actually. Now, what can Fabi do as an antidote? For some reason, bishop f4 came to mind. What else can black do here? Let's see. Castles, g5, bishop g7, bishop g4. d5, I'm looking at briefly. d5, cd. No, d5 always fails. When you're not castled and you go d5, you're always walking into this. You're always walking into this. So let's see what it is. If I was doing the World Championship commentary, probably Polgar and I would be trying to figure this out for 30 minutes, but I'm conserving my energy. So apparently someone in chat is saying this is the line. Let's see. Yes, castles, g5, bishop g7, bishop g4. Not bad, f5, so this is all kind of the computer line. Okay, so like I actually did not do... Yeah, all of this is... Okay, this is just equal. h5, yeah, black has to play h5. Obvious move to prevent white from playing h5. And it's just that black has a good position here. Because white is struggling with all these weaknesses. And Fabi loves positions where you can massage a weakness for like 80 moves. Like bishop h6 is coming. And king h7. But it's not... White is not lost. I mean, white is... It's a double-edged position. King d1 makes a lot of sense. You get the king around to c2. Black is not the only one having the fun. Like, white can also target g6. So... Fabi has castled, indeed. Is rook df7 possible before... No, you cannot go rook df7 here because bishop e6 pins the rook. You can take the bishop first on g4, but it doesn't matter. Because like king g3 is not a serious option for white. Okay. I will find out if there are tie breaks. Also, Hyman has guaranteed a GM norm. Evan Park has guaranteed a GM norm. The only other player in contention for a GM norm, Juraj Druška, who plays Bortnik, has to win for a GM norm. And then lots of players... Avi Kaplan has guaranteed an IM norm. And a couple players have to either draw or win for an IM norm. Okay, so castles played. I think we're going to get that position. I mean, g5, bishop g7, and bishop g4 must be Hyman's idea. There's just no other way. Fabi now up from his chair. They're sort of alternating who gets up and who sits down. Been a while since... Dina is contending for an IM norm. She needs to draw. She needs to draw. By the way, something has gone very wrong for Robbie Kevlishvili. Whoa, lots of like... Since the eval bar is currently on, I'm using the opportunity to... just to find the interesting moments. Dina is playing Guha Mitrabha, and she is struggling right now with the white. But okay, she's had the tournament of her life, and a draw gives her an IM norm. Except she's already... Oh, she's WGM. Okay, she's not an IM. Brewington and Awonder are going to draw. For sure. Brewington and Hardo and Awonder are just trading all the pieces. Wait a second. What is going on here? What is going on here? Yeah, this is a disaster for Kevlishvili. What did he just do? How is this happening? So, bishop e7, everything's fine. Queen c4 makes sense. He wants to trade queens, whatever. And knight h5. Whoa, just abandoning the d5 square. You never do that. And knight a5, yep, of course. Rook b4, so maybe he calculated... Wait a sec, he must have seen knight d5, rook b2. Now knight c4. Rook a2, knight c3, traps the rook. No, but this is like... Your hands are... this is not hard to calculate. Wait a second, knight d5. Is black just like resigning here? What's going on? Rook takes a4 is also possible. Knight b7? I'm shocked right now at wait, bishop f2, yeah, knight h5. Okay, of course I'm influenced by the double question mark, but there were a lot of options here for black. Like I don't know, b5, queen takes queen. But I guess Kevlishvili just like lost the plot here entirely. Rook g5 I would consider. Anything but this. Tunnel visioning his idea. Like knight f4, he fell in love with this idea. And it's obviously a nice maneuver, but the d5 square is like, you must remain and babysit this square at all times. White is thinking, and she's just... No. She will play knight d5. I mean, there's no other move for white. Otherwise, black plays knight f4. She's just played it. Great timing. Exclam is well-deserved. Honestly, I think Kevlishvili might do well to consider like an exchange sack with like rook f4. And another truth bomb is that white can just ignore with knight takes b7. Like, I'm not even interested in that trashy rook of yours. You take my pawn. Once the bishop is eliminated, white just starts tearing black's position. I mean, like, the zombies converge on black's position. Knight d6, it's like, it's just losing for black. Yeah. What a day this would be for Begim. If she wins this game, she beats 2 GMs. Brodsky with black, and Kevlishvili, she would be on 7 out of 9 if she can win this game. But a stunning blunder by Kevlishvili. Eval confirms it. This ain't good. Donchenko has found f6. Very, very nice. Good stuff for Donchenko. Let's have a quick check-in on Druska Bortnik, because Druska gets a GM norm with a win. 23 minutes, though, and Bortnik is clearly playing the clock here. I think he has identified sort of an angle of attack. But are they repeating moves? I think they might be making a draw. Because there's no way Bortnik goes for this. Yeah, g4 here. I'm just trying to figure out knight f4. No, this looks... No, queen h7. No, what am I even talking about? So how many times have they repeated? So you have 1. Yeah, so I think I'm actually surprised. Druska just did not seem very interested in keeping pieces on the board. Now ball is in Bortnik's court. Okay, like, is he going to go for the draw? It's definitely not a position where white risks much. Like, white has no real weaknesses. So I would not be surprised if Bortnik takes the repetition. Also, I mean, I know he's tired, so he probably is tempted to end the tournament on a very decent note. But we'll see. Yeah, he's obviously going to spend some time deciding. I don't think Begim can get a norm. I don't think... Oh, queen e7. Look at that fighting spirit. He knows that black is worse here. But Bortnik says, I need to win this game to finish on 7 out of 9. It'll be a huge result if he wins. And honestly, Druska should be thanking him because, you know, the only way that he gets a norm is by winning. So both players are I think, quite happy here to continue playing the game. But white's clock is going to cause some headaches. Yeah, queen e7 makes sense. Like, he's basically asking white, okay, like, what are you doing? I think what he wants is for Druska to panic push the f-pawn. And this might get white's center very overextended. Like, black can just keep the waiting game going with, like, queen f6. And if white gets too cavalier with the pawns, Maybe even an exchange sacrifice on e4 can be considered. This is going to get really interesting and a pretty big game for the tournament standings. Okay, Mark Hyman's still thinking he has not pushed g5 yet. Ishik-Khan is thinking after f6. God, I don't miss being an IM. I'm getting secondhand, like, norm stress. I had to save a rook and 4 versus rook and 3, and I had the rook and 3 against a 2630 Russian GM for my first norm. That was fun. I think we played 75 moves, and I had to draw that game. And I knew that I was getting a norm with a draw, so not an experience I wish to remember. In fact, it was my second endgame of exactly that kind in that tournament. So, anyways, okay, so let's look at Barakoti versus Oparin, because, you know, the harsh truth, or shall I say the harsher truth, is that 20 minutes for a position of this complexity, they're just entering the middle game. Like, they're just out of the opening. Black has just developed his last piece. Oh, sorry. No, my bad. This was a variation. My point stands. This is move 13, and white is under 20 minutes. Jesus. So where did we last leave off? We left off... Let me put the camera on. Yep, so once again, if you're just joining, this is the final round of the U.S. Masters. I'll go on a short break soon. But this is the deciding final round. Fabiano and Nico Theodoro were in the lead with 7 points out of 8 going into the last round. Theodoro has drawn Nizhnik, leaving Nico on 7.5 out of 9 and Nizhnik on 7 out of 9. But this is a pivotal game because Grigori Oparin has 6.5. So if he wins, he joins Theodoro in second place. Assuming that Fabi wins. If Fabi does not win, all hell breaks loose. So knight d2 was played. Gunnar Anderson does get a norm with a draw. Rook e8 by Oparin. Knight b3, queen c7. Man, this c5 pawn, it's been hanging since like the beginning of... It's been hanging since the Big Bang happened. So is it time for white to take it? And what is Oparin intending here? I think he wants to take back... Okay, black can just win the pawn back. Black can play b6. And then black can play dc. And material equality has been restored. And if white pushes e4 and gets too frisky... Remember, white's kingside is not developed. So like I would be very, very reluctant to go for this in time pressure. You have to weaken your position further. Ugh. And this is far from Oparin's only option. Like he can even play positionally with bishop a6. Although, wait a second, maybe cd. I was going to propose a positional sacrifice, but I think I did not intend to sacrifice 2 pawns and allow d6. So I think d6 is a problem here. Yeah, so probably Oparin does want to win the pawn. Black can actually take on c4 first. This might be a savvier option in white's time pressure. Of course, like the common wisdom is make moves that give your opponent a wide choice. Do not make forcing moves unless you're sure that they're correct in your opponent's time pressure. White needs to get the king side out quickly. White needs to go bishop e2. Maybe Oparin goes b6. And white needs to castle. If white can do that, I'm actually not... I don't hate white's position. You have the bishop pair, you have a pretty solid center, but Oparin can start to operate in the center with e5. So 17 minutes now. I mean, this is madness. Madness Carlsen. He needs to make a decision. Now, maybe c takes d5 can be tried. This is the other capture. But now Oparin can seriously consider playing cd4. Now, how often is cd5 met with cd4? And then d6 can be met with de3, but ef7 cannot be met with ef2. That is insane. Here, white is obviously just losing. Nope, that's not legal. d6, queen c3. Maybe he's evaluating this endgame. But by the looks of it, we can check back in on this game tomorrow morning, and he'll still be thinking. So maybe we should check back in on board 1. 16 minutes now. He's a good blitz player, but I mean, he better simplify the position quickly. Wait, so CD5, what does Oparin want here? Ah, black has C4. And look at this like vision by Oparin. D6, there's CB, and the queen hangs. Ay, ay, ay. No, C4 is really annoying. Really annoying. And then E takes D5, and black has a great little bind in the center. I would still consider this if I were Barot, because the position is a little bit easier for white to play, as opposed to what we were looking at previously with knight takes C5. 15 minutes. And he's not even close to making a move. He's got his hands on his head. Okay. So what I noticed this tournament is people do seem to be really, really good in time pressure. But this isn't just time pressure. This is like, yeah. Only Grishuk, I think, would be comfortable here with white. Actually, he would not be comfortable. He would be comfortable only when he hits the 5-minute mark. But total paralysis for white. I mean, I don't know if this is like a calling card of Arsha Barot, but I don't think so. Let's look back at the top board. He didn't play G5. Wow. And the twists and turns of this game, like I can't predict a single move. And my guess would be he was intending G5 and he didn't like something in that line. So he decided to veer off with bishop F3. Fabi brings his bishop back anyway. And king G2. So now the huge question for Caruana, is he going to push F5? Or, I mean, the answer is yes. The question is, when is he going to push F5? Now, or is he going to go queen D8 first and, you know, prepare to bring all the big boys to the king side quickly? Now, the drawback of queen D8 is it leaves the C6 pawn unattended. So F5 could then be met with E takes F5, and black has to, you know, deal with another headache. So what's Fabi thinking about? Just push F5. Throw caution to the wind. And how does Hyman respond to this move? Yeah, you gotta take the plunge if you're Fabi. Like, this is his only idea, I think. EF, GF. So first question is, okay, well, let's say white just takes twice. This is the most kind of typical response. Yeah, maybe Fabi is worried that the open king side will backfire on him. Again, remember, he's down a pawn, so like he's playing with fire here. And when the position opens up, there a lot of trades might happen. And if we enter any kind of endgame, or if white solves the king safety problem, that a-pawn is going to make its presence felt. So let's say Hyman wants king h2. No, but now, yeah, Fabi definitely would want to go king h8 at some point. From my tactical perspective, it does look really nice for black. So many open files. The bishop could return to h6. e4 becomes a problem for white. For black. Sorry, for white. I have a problem figuring out who's playing with what color. So that isn't satisfying. Maybe he wants g5 here. No, then black plays e4 and out of the question. Thank you, John, for the raid. Appreciate it. I don't know. I wonder what Hyman... Maybe Fabi's also wondering that. But what could it be? Like, what could white be intending? And what could Fabi's other candidate move be? Like, maybe Fabi wants king h8 first. Having played Fabi and analyzed with him, he does like sometimes to, like, keep his opponent guessing as much as possible. Like, flexibility is very important for super GMs. And often when, like, 99% of people would just, like, start their engines, you know, these players have infinite patience to prepare an idea. So I feel like Fabi must be considering something slow. Or maybe even something that may seem like enigmatic, like, I don't know, queen. No, I don't know, actually, no. If I really had to guess, I think he might be deciding between a slow move. He might feel that Hyman is losing the thread of the game, and so maybe he doesn't need to rush things. Maybe even f6, so that g5 can be met with f5. Actually, another Caruana move. Okay, he seems to be close to making a decision, just body language-wise. Ishik-Kan, by the way, is down to 24 minutes, so it's quite problematic. Bortnik's game is also kind of exploding. Yeah, start their engines. Fabi starts his engines. Okay, not those kinds of engines, hopefully. But I'm sure people in the chat have had started their engines a long time ago. F5 is so natural. It's a hard move to resist. Okay. Somebody just says Andy. I wonder if you're referring to Andy Woodward. I'm looking around, just quick check back into the Kevlishvili blunder. And yeah, Gunnar Anderson also, I want to spotlight him for a couple moments when we get a chance. But right now, everything is exploding. Alice Lee versus David Brodsky. Yeah, Dina seems to be in some trouble with the whites. She needs a draw for Norm. Okay, where is the... Yeah, Kevlishvili is like... I'm sure if you looked at him in the playing hall, he just has his mouth open. It's like, how did I miss knight d5? He's still thinking in that position. Barakoti made a move with 11 minutes on his clock. He did take twice on c5, so the first option that we considered, that's board 3. Mark has a GM norm guaranteed. He doesn't need to worry about that. So, great stuff on all boards. I'm going to take a short break and, yeah, take the opportunity before things really heat up as the clocks seem to be winding down. Yeah, what a fast-paced round. I mean, we're not even 2 hours in. Actually, we are 2 hours in, but already fire on board on all of the critical boards. So I'll update you on the top board as well as on Ishik-Kan's game against Donchenko, where white is down to 22 minutes and needs to find checkmate. Some really big games for tournament standings and for norms. You're watching the last round of the US Masters. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back with more big updates momentarily. Okay. The action is heating up. We're back. Round 9, final round of the U.S. Masters in Charlotte, North Carolina. Yeah, I really don't know why FIDE would schedule a small event like the World Championship during a tournament as important as the U.S. Masters, but we'll take that up with the International Chess Federation. But right now, all eyes on the top board, the deciding board. On board 2, Theodoro and Nizhnik drew their game quickly. Theodoro is currently on 7.5 out of 9. But with a victory over Mark Hyman, Fabi will earn clear first with 8 out of 9, as well as a handsome rating gain, which if you're 2805, I imagine is pretty difficult to do in an open. Currently, before the break, we did catch Fabi playing the move f5, as we predicted, and Hyman quickly responded by taking twice and playing bishop e4. And the computer seems to believe that white is borderline lost, but looking at this without, any silicon assistance, it's a hard position to evaluate. Again, if the pieces come off the board, black's king is not entirely safe, white's up a pawn, so I think black is, one mistake away from allowing Hyman to turn the tables. The temptation here for black is to play d5. I think black needs a little bit more, oomph in the attack. It's not enough to open the f-file. White can take care of the f-file, but if the center opens up, white just might have too little coordination, and the king might be too weak to handle that, little fires everywhere. So I think Fabi must be assessing the pros and cons of a move like d5. And he's down to 33 minutes, but still not an issue. I mean, the time is plenty of time for both players right now. I'm not seeing that being the deciding factor yet. So the issue actually with this is I think takes. Oh, there's some incredible tactics here. So one very important point is that if white plays CD, black plays CD, the queen now has lateral mobility and it can move across to g6 with check. This has to be mating. The other cool point is if white goes e4, relying on the fact that this hangs a rook, well, it might hang a rook, but white has hung a king. Even though I haven't calculated this to the end, there must be checkmate here. Yeah, check, king g2, rook f2, and king g4 is simply queen f3. There's probably prettier mates available. So d5 is one candidate move. Chad is proposing rook df7, but the problem with doubling is that you're also setting yourself up for a bunch of trades on the f-file. So you have to make sure if you're doubling on the f-file that you have a clear follow-up to rook f1. But I don't think d5 is necessarily the only way to continue the attack. Maybe Fabi can make a slower move. I just don't know exactly what that slower move looks like. I really would be tempted by d5, and maybe he's deciding, do I play d5 here? Or do I trade and then play d5 in order to put some heat on the knight? Which technically is not even really hanging, but that isn't necessarily reassuring for white. So the position looks very juicy for Caruana, but it's he's also towing a very fine line. Like he makes one mistake, white consolidates, and things could turn around quickly. A draw in Oparin-Barot Oparin. Wow. B6 was accompanied by a draw offer. So with white having 10 minutes for the rest of the game and black with 51, probably Oparin didn't love his position after bishop a3. Now, I pointed this line out, and a draw was just agreed. I pointed out this line, bishop b7, I think short castles, and probably white has a tiny edge, but I'm not even sure of that. I mean, e5. Why is black worse here? So let's have a look-see. Yeah, no, okay, so this position black is doing great. Like, does this decision make sense? Aha, so e4. Ah, so I did point this move out, but apparently white holds on to the center here. Like, I would be very scared to get into this in time pressure, but e5, there's d5. And probably Oparin saw this particular line and got a little worried. I mean, knight h5, black is going to go f5 quickly. In time pressure, I would be very tempted to play this with black. Especially because Oparin now lands on 7 out of 9. Great news for Theodoro. fantastic news for Theodoro. The impact for Nico is that this takes Oparin out of the equation. Oparin now has 7. But now a bunch of players who have 6 points can catch Oparin in 3rd place. So if Fabi wins, he will have 8. Theodoro will have clear 2nd at 7.5. Oparin and Nizhnik will have 7. So I feel like Oparin just must have not liked his position because the time situation seemed very concerning for white. Also, by the way, looks like d takes c4, which I did mention as a more flexible option, gave a great position for black because now e4 can be met with e5. And the bishop is starting to feel really loose. This was a missed opportunity. Wow, f3, bishop f5. That is quite the move. Yeah, just who cares about... Yeah, just develop the bishop anyway. Obviously, e takes f5, e takes d4 is a check, but all it would take for Oparin is to complicate the game a little bit, and I'm afraid that white wouldn't have enough time to figure anything out. And if bishop e2, now... Okay, chat should refresh. We went off stream briefly, but I think we're back. Yeah, we are back. The obligatory once per stream disconnect. So this was played, and this is the only move that I analyzed, actually. Rook dh1, fg, and we looked at this queen h2 line. And here I mentioned that rook f4 appears to be black's best defense. But Donchenko is going to find this. Like, rook f4, once you reach this position, is not that hard. Although, you have to see that rook g6 doesn't work. And how do I know that? Because the king runs up to e6. And incredible. Bishop c4, d5, and the attack fizzles out. So that's not available. I assume this is white's follow-up. And the line that I analyzed previously is rook h4, takes. The queen... Nope. That's a bad idea. The queen returns to f4. First of all, you do need a queen for the attack. And white is intending to just play rook takes h4. I mean, let's take stock of the material. White would be 2 pawns down, potentially winning one of the pawns back. And black just doesn't have enough defensive firepower to sustain a move like g5, because white has rook g1 anyway. And this is game over immediately. I mean, like, visually, I would not be surprised if most players would lose this position in like 3 seconds. However, black could go queen e7. Let's say rook takes h4. Again, g5, there's rook g4. So black could quite efficiently bring the big boys into the defensive effort. Queen h6, there's always this annoying little move, queen g7. So with 12 minutes, it's anybody's game. Absolutely anybody's game. I mean, again, the nerves impact your time usage as well. Ishikkan gets the GM title with a draw in this game. Donchenko played a very sharp Najdorf, and maybe his decision, the chess gods will look favorably upon it. Quick look at Bortnik's game. He has just played the move queen f6. Jaruska is in time pressure as well. I mean, someone's in time pressure on every board. And we might get a queen trade here. Yeah, Brewington will draw a wonder, I think. Just a matter of time. Let's see here. I think Gunnar Anderson might get his norm. He needs a draw for the IM norm. That would be incredible. I mean, he has clearly got enough in the tank, I think, to play like an IM. He's one of the most underrated players in the tournament. I don't know why Oparin drew. You'll have to ask Oparin, but I think I showed the line that he was afraid of, but he shouldn't have played b6. He should have played dc first. And then he would have avoided the annoying line. So here we have a potential queen trade. Jaruska needs a victory, and he's just played a move, and it is queen f6. So is this fizzling out into a draw, or is black... And black has kind of an initiative here in the endgame, honestly. Rook f6, I mean, this... I would be a little bit scared here, but maybe knight h5. Ooh. I don't know who I'd be more scared to be here, but rook e6? It's like both players are at each other's throats. Unfortunately, here, pinned pieces protect, so the knight still protects h2. This is not a legal move just because the knight is pinned. This would be mate. Wait a second, what is white's move here? Could white play f3, knight e3? Yeah, position remains very sharp. If Bortnik wants a draw, or if he doesn't feel, if white has something concrete, then black should go knight f6. And if black goes knight f6, I would say that this is likely to fizzle out into a draw. Very curious to see what Bortnik decides to recapture with. Very interesting. Because again, if you're just joining us, where have you been? But you've, not a bad place to join. The time control, 90 plus 30. No additional time added on move 40. This is all you got. Of course, with increment of 30 seconds. It all comes down to the top board, though. Fabi is still thinking. A lot of big decisions about to happen, like, right now. Evan Park has already secured his norm. Let's see. Let's check in on Gunnar Anderson's crazy position against Christopher Repka. Whoa. Wait a second. So it looks like black is... Wow, he just, Gunnar just gunned it on the H-pawn. Whoa. Some major fireworks. So wait a second. Knight f3. I mean, my first impression is black cannot possibly be worse here. I mean, black is up a pawn and attacking. Knight f3, king g2. If black wants a draw, if black wants the norm, he should just go knight h4, I guess. And knight takes f5. And again, how can black be long castle, I suppose? And only black is having fun, because the king is very, very weak and could get checkmated even in the endgame. My guess would be maybe rook c5 was accompanied with a draw offer. Also, wait a second, d6 here. d6 is a move. Takes. I think Repka wants to find the right time to sack an exchange. And this would take some of the fun out of black's attack. This would also give him an extra exchange, which is kind of nice. No, black is definitely better. The only question is by how much. Let's have a quick... Yeah, knight f3, best move. Now knight h4 is equal. Okay, knight f5 is equal, but not the best that black can do. The best that black can do is apparently rook a4. What a move. Actually a prophylactic move. Prophylactic move, because if you rush rook h2, the king escapes. King g3, and the king can escape via the 4th rank. And if you play rook a4 here, the bishop can capture on g4. Very important subtlety. So you actually start with rook a4, and if white proactively moves to g3, white loses the game because black has this check. Pretty incredible stuff. If he finds rook a4, give him the norm right then and there. White's only move apparently to go the other way. Yeah, rook takes h2. Black basically is playing without risk. And Gunnar has made a move. And he went d6. He did go d6, and white did sack the exchange. So I still think from black's perspective, he is not really risking. There's just no way black is risking here. Because bishop e4, there is rook c8. Or king d7. So black is not losing the knight. This is the biggest, or rook a6 even. Apparently white's best move is bishop d3, which is not easy at all. And white's got 12 minutes on his clock. Ugh. Gunnar has great winning chances this game, and he should. I don't want to jinx him, but, the norm is... the smell is wafting from the playing hall. The smell of many, many norms being made. There's going to be some heartbreaks for sure. There always are heartbreaks at the end of a long tournament like this. Some players just don't have enough in the tank for the clutch result. Yeah, Kevlishvili is losing his rook. Or at the very least in exchange. All right. Yeah, Gunnar started off the tournament with a draw against Tari. He was winning in the final position, but only with a computer line. Okay. In the meantime, I'm just stalling, waiting for Fabi to move. The current position is this one in Fabi's game. 20 minutes now. Now the time situation is starting to slowly become concerning. I wouldn't be concerned until black reaches maybe the 10-minute mark. But if black reaches the 10-minute mark, that's exactly 10 minutes from now. Because black has 20 minutes. It doesn't take a commentator to say that, but Fabi has been thinking for maybe 20 minutes counting. Dina seems like she'll be able to draw. Let me see. Yeah, looks like Dina holding nicely thus far. So she needs to draw for the norm. All right. Yeah, Repka is not in a good place with 10 minutes. I'm just looking around to see if there's any other results that are coming up. Okay, Burke versus Sean Rodrigue have an interesting position, but we need to focus on the top games. Brandon is in trouble against Budisavljevic, I think. He is down in exchange. Fernandez Mishra, looks like Mishra might win his game against Daniel Fernandez. Rough final day for him. He might lose both. Got crushed earlier by Grigori Oparin. Boards 2 and 3 are both a draw. Barakoti draws Oparin and Theodoro draws Nizhnik. Let's see, Ishik-Khan. Rook DH1. Okay, so Donchenko did not take on G5. He went Rook F7. And he went Queen C7, the 7th ranked defense by Alexander Donchenko. White is under 10 minutes. So wait, Bishop C... Whoa, there's a million moves here. Rook G6 check. Ooh. Rook G6 check is a move. Fabi played D5. Amazing. Just a second. Rook G6. Rook G7, Queen H7 is curtains. King H8. White does not have to rush and sacrifice something. Like, White can just play GF or Rook F6. And material is equal here, believe it or not. But the king safety situation is far from equal. I think Donchenko is relying on, like, D5 at some point. But White must be winning here. Like, there's just no way. I would be also tempted to explore, like, Bishop G4, Bishop E6, but maybe that's too slow. Now, Bishop C4, deflecting the queen and trying to crash through on the 7th rank, I'm not sure about, because Bishop C4 always runs into D5. But this, I think, is what Donchenko is, of course, hoping for. God. Okay, he's made a move, and it is Bishop G4. He's played it. I did mention this maneuver, and that E6 square is real juicy. If Donchenko plays F5, last thing I'll point out before we go back to Fabi's game, I think he's calculated this. He must have calculated something. GF, G6, Rook 8, G7. Where's the win there? Okay, we got to get to Fabi's game. Okay, well, I'll simultaneously keep an eye on Ishik-Khan's game. We'll see if Donchenko plays F5. We'll devote more energy to this. But we have to get to the top board because things are happening. Fabi did play D5. Never followed the commentator's advice, but he did. Will this backfire? We'll see. Bishop F5, Rook F5, Rook F1. Very logical. Fabi must have seen this. But pieces are starting to come off the board. And again, the more pieces come off, the happier White's king starts to feel. Look at how quickly Hyman is playing. He senses that Fabi, this is the golden rule advanced by Bortnik, and Judith Polgar was mentioning this in the World Championship. And it sounds like a joke, but it's not. When you think for 20 plus minutes, most of the time it's a mistake. Like, it's just like a crazy, it sounds so paradoxical. Like, you put past a certain point, there's almost like diminishing returns. So Rook takes F1. What is Fabi's follow-up, though? Rook F1. Great stuff. If Hyman makes a draw, Theodoro and Caruana will be playing a tiebreak, a blitz tiebreak, to decide the winner of the tournament. They will be tied at 7.5. But anything could happen here. Queen D8. Queen D8. This is his big idea. Getting the queen back. It's a double attack. DC and Queen H4 both threatened. If White slides the queen away, what are Black's ideas? Let's try to take stock. Queen F2 is the most tempting move to my eyes. DC... But wait a second, this does not look threatening. White could even go knight e4. This is where the extra pawn comes in so handy. Let alone the fact that BC has to be calculated, because Rook d2, knight e2, not the end of the story. But this looks pretty nice for Black. You could even take on a2. Queen f7 check is just an innocuous check, king h8. But no, I don't think white's going to go BC. I think white's going to go knight e4. Maybe black can go c3. But it looks like black's running out of gas, and he's stuck on the freeway. Like rook c1. Look at this knight. Such a dominant knight. Such a sad bishop. And the fortunes would be reversed here. I really don't like this. Queen f2. Wait a second. Queen f2. No joke. So if white does not play queen f2, are there other options? So king h3 is one option. But that walks right into DC with tempo. But why do you need other options? I think queen f2 is begging to be played. Whoa. So I saw briefly before going on break that the engine was giving a big advantage for Fabi, but this was before he played d5. So maybe that was a mistake. We're commentating without the eval bar here. Makes it more interesting in the final round. All right, so Kevlishvili on board 6 is very close to resigning against Tokarjonova, who will be the winner of 2 consecutive games against GMs. But right now we need to focus on a couple of the big games, the tournament-defining games. Queen f2, e4 is suggested by chat. But how does that help? Queen f2, e4, I move my knight. What now? What's the idea here? I mean, you can play DC here and then try to get your rook to d2. Bishop e5, okay. I was thinking white would tuck the king away either to h3 or to h1. And again, I'm very skeptical of black's attacking chances here, because like black's king might actually be shakier than white's. Like rook g7 is met with rook g1. I'm not pretending I wouldn't need like a, I'm not pretending I wouldn't be scared if I was Mark Hyman here, but the fact that he's clinched the GM norm definitely helps his nerves. No question about it. CD, he has taken. Oh, wow. So he's trying to have his cake and eat it too. I think he wants to keep his extra pawn. So now does he want queen f2? Yeah, Fabi recaptured instantly. I guess black just didn't have anything other than CD. And what did he play? I've been sort of fixated on this move. I'm sure there are other options. Positive. Queen e1 is possible as well, by the way. Okay, he hasn't made a move yet. Bortnik is in an endgame. Looks pretty balanced. Wouldn't be shocked at a draw. Evan Park versus Bruzan also looks pretty even on board 8. So a lot of games on like some of the lower boards might be draws. This is good for Theodoro, Oparin et al. Okay, what's the move here for Hyman? He's at 36 minutes. That's so much time. Yeah, Fabi, I don't think this was in his... First of all, playing Hyman in the last round wasn't in his plans, but neither was just trading off a bunch of pieces. Like low... Again, Fabi... Always the poker face. He's so experienced. He's not going to show anything but on his face. But, the attack is running out of fuel unless he can manufacture something in the center. So again, let's look very quickly. Queen f2. What is Fabi's move? Is it d4? And one very interesting thing to note is that I can see why Hyman took, but one benefit of doing this with the pawn still on c6 is that black has this crazy resource queen a8 in some positions, and that could be a problem. Like knight e4, queen a8. Maybe this actually becomes a significant moment. My guess is this should be equal. I mean, black should not be in big trouble. So much activity. Queen f3, queen a2 check. Can black get away with all of this? But even if white plays ed, it should be a draw. Not to mention, like, knight f6 looks terrifying here for black. God. Yeah, probably some sort of a perpetual at the end of the line. Okay, let's look. Let's spoil it. Queen f2. Yeah, obviously 0.0. So d4, the line we just looked at, queen a8. Yeah, queen f3 apparently, or queen f5. And black cannot take the pawn, but actually because of king h3. Just getting the king away, and now knight f6 check. Ah, and now the g1 square is available for the rook. He has played queen f2. He has played queen f2. Queen a5. Rook d... Like, the computer suggestions are all weird. Bobby likes to play moves like king h8, but it looks like white would be very much in the driver's seat. e4 is a positional threat here as well. I really like this idea, e4. And either you have to yield the d5 square, or you have to give away this huge outpost, and now white's pushing. He's played king h8. Or has he? Wait. He has. It's on the board. It's a 3-result game. It's absolutely a 3-result game here. Now Fabi gets up. Doesn't necessarily mean he's happy. I mean, 2800s have to pee as well. Believe it or not. Yeah, just looking here. Brewington is struggling, by the way, against a Wonder. Looked like a dead draw, but Brewington is screwing the pooch here at the end of the game. So a Wonder, actually, the second seed might end on a high note. I'll keep people aware of all the norm developments, but obviously this is the important game. No, that's bait. Lots of time for white, but very easy for white to blunder. Like, the knight is loose. Everything is very loose. And in these positions, it can be very overwhelming to, like, choose a move, because everything has some sort of a drawback. Donchenko is still thinking after bishop g4, but he's got mountains of time. By the way, just quickly, just look at how a Wonder is, like, putting pressure on Brewington from this position. Like, white cannot lose this, and somehow a Wonder outplays him from, like, a slightly worse endgame with opposite colored bishops. Why did he go to a3? Hyman's about to make a move. I'll rewind back to Hyman's game just a moment. But yeah, Brewington just, like, opening things up for a Wonder. Yeah, white just passed for like 15 moves, and of course, eventually, a Wonder is going to build up some initiative. And the time situation, not Brewington's friend either. I think a Wonder is going to win this game. And a Wonder is, unfortunately, yeah, he's on 5.5 out of 8, so he is basically out of contention for any real prizes. But still, would be a nice way to end a rough tournament. Druska down in 9 minutes against Bortnik. Bortnik is going to push that endgame forever. Try to get white to blunder. Kavlishvili is in huge trouble. He might be losing. Okay, we wait. Benjamin Bach with a very complicated position as well. Jacobson is losing. I wonder what happened here with... Why is Brandon... Oh, he must have blundered. G5, bishop G4. Ooh, this is Brandon's game. Look at this. Takes mate. Oh, bishop G2, bishop H3. Wow, bishop F3, G4. The bishop runs out of squares. Brandon blundered this. Wow, incredible idea. That's why black played G5. This must have been what Brandon missed, and he had to give up the... Yeah, he's lucky that he has this resource. Bishop f6 keeps him in the game, because if black takes, there's a skewer. Sadly, there's also a hanging rook on h1. And black is completely winning here. I mean, it's just a full exchange. Great tactic by black, and this would be rough, but Brandon will keep fighting. Ishikkan, it's his move, also in his game with Donchenko, who has played bishop c8 after a long think. My guess is White must have a forced win here, but with 8.5 minutes and the GM title hanging in the balance, if he finds a forced draw, maybe he is, maybe he's had enough. I mean, rook g6 is so tempting here. Rook g6 is so tempting. Actually, even GF, like, just played GF. Hyman played e4, incredible move. Like, he's playing so well. He's playing like a strong GM. By the way, this looks great for Ishikkan, considering that he only needs a draw. This looks like a perfect way to play it safe and preserve winning chances. But easy for me to say he's got 8 minutes, and apparently the eval is not that convincingly in his favor. So apparently no forced win for White here. It's so cruel. So cruel. Okay, let's go back to Fabi's game because e4 has been played. Absolute clutch moves. And this might be fizzling out into a draw. We might get that playoff after all. Theodoro just woke up from his nap because a couple moves ago, looked like Fabi might wrap this up quickly. Yeah, Hyman has not lost a single game this event. He did make a draw in round 2 with a 2300. But other than that, he's had incredible results every round. No losses. Imagine if Hyman wins. If Hyman wins, it's Hyman playing Theodoro for first place. I don't think... Yeah, Hollywood could not script this any better. But, I mean, Fabi should not lose this. But we're also biased. Like, Hyman has not played worse this game at all. And he's managed his time better. This is wild. Yeah, rook takes g6 was played, by the way, by Ishikkan. Yeah, John Burke has a great position on this board 14, though. That's not really germane to the standings. Yeah, Gunnar Anderson on board 18 needs a draw for an IM norm. He's well on the way. He's got pretty much a risk-free position up in exchange. Yeah, Fabi is not happy here. Because again, e4, why is this so strong? Because d4 you have knight d5. And this knight is a monster. And if de, you just take it. And black is just simply running out of pieces. And black has to, I think black has to do this. Takes in queen a8. But this looks very drawish. Queen f3. And I mean, white is like ultra solid. And it's actually black who has to be very careful with such a monster knight. So de knight e4 is on the board. This is on the board. I would not be shocked if Fabi offered a draw here. I wouldn't be stunned. It would suck for his rating. Like, he would lose probably 3 or 4 points for a draw, but still, he would guarantee the FIDE Grand Prix points, especially if he won the tiebreak blitz, which would then happen between Caruana and Theodoro. Yeah, but it looks like Fabi had his chances. We are going to take a look after the game very, very quickly, but perhaps d5 on move 26 was premature. So is Fabi, though. Fabi's also an excellent blitz player. They both are. That would be a fun playoff between two exhausted GMs. I don't see how white loses this either, honestly. I just don't see how Fabi he just doesn't have the pieces. He can't move. Like, bishop h6 allows a queen trade. And we're assuming that, by the way, that Hyman is, like, groveling for a draw. Let's not, let's give him the respect he deserves. He's played a great game. Queen A8 on the board. He's up a pawn. He doesn't have to give that pawn back. He can try Queen E2, but I would be way too scared. I would be way too scared to allow this. And like now actually black gets the latitude to play a move like Bishop H6, and now the threats start to appear. So if I'm Mark Hyman, he seems like a practical player. Queen F5 or Queen F3 would be my two candidate moves. Queen F3 would be irresistible for me. Just like, yeah, give the pawn, but set this, this would survive like, this would survive anything, this construct. And then Knight G5 is coming. Like, Fabi will probably have to go back to A8, and this is just a draw. Like, if white plays Knight G5, it forces the queens off the board. And then it's time for a draw. So, if Fabi was white here, he would definitely just start playing this. Like, Rook E2, he would play this for a win, no question. But as the lower rated player, you do have the luxury of nobody giving you a hard time for bailing out. Yeah, Ishik Khan, I keep repeating that game just because he's so low on time. So low on time. He just made a really interesting move. Oh my gosh, I just quickly have to spotlight this game. Look at what he's just done. He's gone rook back to H6. Boom. Just leaving the bishop hanging, and I think he wants this G6 move. And actually, they've reached a position that I promised to look at if they reached it, and they have. And now I think I see the Queen F4 must be his idea. Just hitting the bishop and threatening Rook H7, which would win the queen. Wait, what does black do here? So if black can't take the bishop, can black take the pawn instead? God, this is terrifying. Wait, there's a move in Hyman's game. I think black has to take the pawn. Let's quickly double check. No, bishop H5 is winning. Oh my gosh. Oh, black is like in huge trouble. Bishop G4, G6 is going to happen. Rook C8. Oh, black can threaten mate. C3, BC, B3. Okay, so this is what he was calculating for 85 minutes. Okay, back to Fabi's game. They're making moves. Rook E1 has been played. I would play Queen F3 here. I would not risk the move Queen E2. I think this is his last chance to jump off. Oh my gosh, look at the computer move. King G3. Because Rook takes C4, there's Queen F3. And of course, King G3, Rook D3, King G4. Queen C8 check, Queen F5, H5, King G5, Bishop H6, King G6. I'm not kidding. This is the top computer line. White is winning. Queen G8 check. You could just start sweeping up the pieces. If he plays King G3, yeah, no, there's no way. There is just no way. I think Queen F3 is the practical move. And I'm a little bit worried that he has gone Queen E2. Ooh. Whoa. Bishop 8. Fabi's going to go Bishop H6. That bishop is out of its cage real fast. I wonder if Hyman saw Bishop H6 and is aware that Rook D2 is like a huge threat, because once I spotted Bishop H6, like this would be enough for me. Maybe he just goes King H1 there. Maybe white is just okay. But look at this line. Bishop H6, king moves away. Now where's the king going to move? Like G1, very scary square. H1 does preserve the pin. Bishop D2, he better have calculated this. And maybe white has perpetual. Queen F3, yeah. Queen F6, this has to be perpetual check. Queen E6. Yeah, there's no way black can escape this way because you're going to lose your queen eventually. That would be that would be absolute nerves of steel to go into this against Fabi. Just to go King H1. And okay, Rook D2 is still possible, but no longer nearly as scary now that it doesn't win the queen. Woo! What's happening? He's thinking. Fabi is thinking. Fabi is thinking. Druska Bortnik, I think, is likely to be a draw, but still very sharp there as well. Yeah, I think Begim is likely to defeat Robbie Kevlishvili. Here we go. Bishop h6 played. This is a huge moment. 30 minutes for Mark Hyman. He's got to use them wisely. No reason to start playing bullet because Fabi's at 15 minutes. Okay, can white go queen f3? Like, can white still bail out with queen f3, or is it too late? Wait, why not queen f3, actually? Ah, then bishop f4. That's the issue. Bishop f4, and the queen is suddenly, like, shut down a little bit. He has made a move. It is queen... I thought he did. Actually, no, I was looking at stream recording. No move yet. No move yet. Theodoro is praying for king h1. I mean, I'm positive that queen f3 is still a draw. There's no way that white is losing after queen f3, bishop f4. But from my commentating experience, I've seen the way this goes south for lower rated players is it doesn't all happen at once. It's like suddenly you feel the danger. You feel like you can lose. Because I think 2 moves ago, Hyman was feeling real good. And that's what produces the ultimate blunder. It's like you start feeling, wait a second, like, I'm not actually out of the woods. And then you get nervous. And we saw John Michael Burke experience that earlier in the tournament. That was a different scenario entirely. King to g1. So bishop f4 is the natural move. Yeah, king g1 has been played. It's on the board. Yeah, bishop f4 for Fabi is automatic to me. Bishop f4, stick the bishop on an outpost, protect the pawn, prevent these queen f3 ideas. And now this king is right in the crossfire. Like, it's in the war zone. I can guarantee you the eval is still 0.00, but, you know, or like 0.0001. That doesn't tell you anything. Bishop f4. I'm a lot more nervous for Hyman here than I was like 5 seconds ago, seemingly. And I did, you know, point this out. Like here, if he just didn't cling to this pawn, he went queen f3, like you can't lose, essentially. And you keep Black's bishop at bay. Like, he allowed Black to activate the bishop. Who cares about the extra pawn? Like, the queens are not going to get traded. He's like, over my dead body, we're going to trade queens. Black's pieces are optimized. What does white do? Queen g2, maybe? Maybe queen g2? I don't know why Hyman is playing quite fast. 27 plus minutes, he's played queen g2. Wait a second. Rook d3 is a move. Woo. I would also consider rook moving back to d7. Very, obviously, very straightforward idea. You're not trying to mask your threats, but another move that I've seen Fabi play a lot is, no, but h6 might create a big hole on g6. It might allow the queen to infiltrate. White should still hold this. I would take a pretty big blunder for white to lose this, but definitely a little bit more tense now that the bishop is so active. Donchenko, by the way, is under 30 minutes. Like, he doesn't have infinite time. Yeah, Bortnik Druska should be a draw, if I'm understanding the endgame correctly. A Wonder still pushing Brewington on board number 9. Rook d7 played. Knight g5, queen a7, queen f2. Woo! But it's an only move. Suddenly white is down to only moves. Like knight g5, queen a7. This is me analyzing, by the way. This did not happen. Hyman is thinking after rook d7. Like, this... Rook e2, rook d1, and you're mated. Like, here, I think you have to play queen f2. Like, I didn't sign up for only moves. But queen f2 is an only move, but it also might be entirely satisfactory because bishop h2, king g2, and you're out of the woods. Actually, white's probably winning here, but bishop h2 is done. So is knight g5 the only move? That's, to me, the bigger question. Engine says queen f3 only move. Wait, so knight g5, what's wrong with that? Knight g5, queen a7, queen f2. I'm trying to figure this out, but knight g5, queen... No, I was also thinking for, knight g5, let's play h6. And then I was like, no, wait, the queen is hanging. Let's not forget that knight g5 attacks the black queen. This is why it's such a tempting move. Yeah, knight g5. Rook d5, knight f7, checkmate. Would be one way to end the tournament. John Burke defeated Jean-Rodrigue Lemieux on board 14. Not important for the standings. We're keeping an eye on this game. Why is knight g5 bad? Like, we're trying not to use the engine here, but why is knight g5 bad? Misha?
Worst result.
Mm-hmm.
Worst result.
Because he needed a win for Norm.
He needed and I needed to win. So.
Oh, I don't know why he was trading all the pieces right out of the opening.
Yeah.
It's just
I
like...
tried to rush because he started to repeat it. I said, no, let's play. And I, of course, messed up.
You were maybe worse, but...
Yeah.
It was annoying that he was like... He didn't seem to be playing for a win at all, even though he needed to win for Norm. No, come on. Knight g5, queen g2 is not winning. It's definitely not winning for black.
I know it's a different position now in the board.
Oh. Did he make a move? No, Hyman is thinking.
No,
we're on a delay, but you know what happened.
Yes.
But don't.
They still play.
They're still playing.
Yeah, they're still playing.
Bortnik knows, obviously, because we're on a 15-minute delay, that he is literally from the future. It's from the playing hall.
Yeah.
The fact that they're still playing means that no immediate queen trade and no queen blunder. Maybe he blundered his queen and he's thinking which wall to punch. Oh my gosh. Okay, Bruzan, Evan Park. Bruzan is actually pushing Evan Park. I realize he's actually up a pawn. Evan Park has a GM norm in his pocket, though. Makovey Benjamin Bach is a draw. Did you see Jacobson's this tactic very quickly by Budisavljevic? If bishop g2, there's bishop h3.
Oh.
So Brandon had to like literally give up everything. So Luca will win his game. But okay, back to Fabi's game. Yeah, this is the only game. Well, Ishikkan versus Donchenko is the other game that's still very interesting. Kevlashvili, I think, is losing to Tokurjonova. I don't think he's going to save that game. He made a horrible move at some point, just a crazy blunder. Okay, let's check. Whoa. The black is... Oh my gosh. Queen a7 check. Queen a5. And like white is just in trouble here, apparently. But why? Like what is the threat? I guess the threat is like rook d2 maybe? Yeah, so the problem is that white's setup is now completely shattered. And the bishop is super, super active. It's just engine nonsense, exactly. So it doesn't tell us anything. The engine literally tells us nothing. Queen f3 is... Rook g7, king f1. Rook g3 was a move. Like, what is this? Okay, so this is why this is counterproductive. But by feel, I think Hyman has lost the plot. And he's getting nervous, and you can see the cracks start to show. And he's actually thinking now. I mean, he should have been doing that a little bit earlier. Now he realizes, wait a sec. Okay, knight g5 played. Okay, Fabi is obviously not going to. He's not going to take on G2. He will play Queen A7. Queen A7 is the easy move because that's a tempo move. After Queen F2, it's a harder decision. Where do you go with Black's Queen? Like Queen B7, Queen A5 is probably the computer move because it makes contact with the rook. So it keeps White's Queen at bay. Terrifying. Oparin actually made a draw, very surprisingly, on board 3. His opponent had 10 minutes. Why not Queen G8? It's also probably possible. Queen G8 doesn't look great to me somehow. I don't know why. Too passive. Queen G8, King H1, maybe. No, the queen has to stay on the queen side, I think. Like Queen A5, Queen A7, it has to stay and kind of apply pressure from the other side. Andy Woodward defeated Harshit Kunka. Good ending for him. Alice Lee still playing David Brodsky. Alice Lee actually looks like she has a good position. Wow, Cordova versus Plotkin is an insane position. Just very quick. No clue who's winning here. I don't think I've ever seen this before. And Ishikkan versus Donchenko is currently in this position. Oh, they're going down this line, Rook C8. They're going Rook C8, C3, BC, B3.
This Turkish guy offered draw to Donchenko like in the opening.
And he declined?
Donchenko declined. Yeah.
When? In the opening?
Yeah.
Well, of course, he needs a draw for the norm.
No, no.
Oh, like when he was mating him already.
White was offered draw.
Oh, Donchenko offered him a draw?
No, opposite.
Ishikkan offered Donchenko a draw.
Offered, yeah.
Well, of course, Donchenko wants to win. He wants to...
Losing.
This is his third norm, by the way. C3, BC, and B3. Woo! And Black's queen cannot move because of Rook H7. And again, Rook G7, Queen F4 is just winning for White, I think. Holy smokes. F3, whoa! He played F3. I didn't even see this. What is going on? Bobby played Queen A5 directly. Yes, we'll get there in a second. Okay, makes sense. EF, GF. Wait, how does Black keep the game going? Queen C2, Queen C2, Rook C2, Rook C2, Rook C7, King D2. Wait, what is Black's move here? Because F3 was not the computer move. But it makes sense. Makes sense. Maybe Rook G7 simply. King G8. I think this is what maybe is the problem because White's queen can move, can't leave C2. It's anybody's game here. It's 4 minutes on the clock. Queen D2 maybe. Anyways, I'll keep an eye on that one as well. Queen A5 right away.
See you. Have a nice
Congratulations. Thank you. Hopefully we don't get a blitz playoff because then I have to commentate that as well. No, just kidding, of course. I hope. Телефон взял? Пожалуйста, все на связи. Поздравляю с достойным результатом. Did I win? I'm not playing, but I did do well in the blitz. The farmers were in town once again. Okay. Yeah, I mean, the Black's threat is queen takes e1, I believe. My score is 5.5 out of... I'm pretty sure I gained a little bit of rating, but I have no idea, honestly. The queen e4. Now, the queen e4 is the natural move. Just centralize the queen. And of course, you're aiming at the h7 pawn. So you're asking black how he wants to improve. H6 is very tempting here. Hit the knight. But okay, let's say knight comes back. No, but queen a2. Now white starts to collapse. Hyman plays rook f1, so he just moves the rook away. Who did I play in the blitz? Wait a second. Rook f1 looks very wrong. Wait a second. This looks wide open now. Rook d2, knight f7 mate. Can't forget about that. But what if you start queen a7? Queen a7, king h1, rook d2. Then knight f7, queen d2. Oh my gosh, what a trap. Oh my god, that's a crazy trick. 1 second. Obviously, black has h6 also. Also needs to be considered. There's so many tempting options for Fabi. Wait a second. h6 is... h6, white has to go... No, but knight e6 loses a knight. Wait a second. What does white do if... Fabi just plays the simplest move, h6. Queen c6, queen a7. If the knight moves, okay, the queen, everything is lost. Knight e6, queen b6 forks the knight and the king. I think Hyman must have been hoping for queen a7 and rook d2. This is beautiful, but it's not... I mean, Fabiano wasn't born yesterday. And look at it, queen b7, boom, queen g2, back and white wins. That's insane. Holy smokes. h6, is that just winning for black? Is that just winning for black? I mean... maybe one idea is h6, queen c6, queen a7, king h1, hg. Yeah, also looks winning for black. Fabi has enough pawns here. Check. Now, obviously, don't blunder mate. You have to go here. Check. Here. Again, there's like a lot of pitfalls to avoid. Rook g7 allows a perpetual, but it's all because of the bishop. That honestly is if he loses... Hyman lost because he allowed bishop h6, bishop f4. This is just crazy to like allow the bishop to get active because you wanted to defend an a-pawn. The cruel part of the game is that the pawn will probably remain. It will survive and outlast the king. h6 played. Fabi has played h6. Of course he's played h6. I mean, you can't give a 2800 this move on a golden platter. That is... It looks like black is winning. Again, I don't have the eval bar on, but it does appear that I just don't see a move for white. It's just a free piece. Holy smokes. Yeah, I mean, the losing moment, and again, I've talked about this a lot, it's not always the moment where you make the decisive mistake. It's the losing moment was queen e2. Like, you just had to play queen f3, and you hold the line, you're chilling. The moment he let this bishop into the game, things get much scarier. And all it took was like 2 moves. Oh my god. Fabi is going to win the tournament, most likely. Clear first if he wins with 8 out of 9 and a rating gain. And it probably means he might join us in the studio, but I won't insist on it. It's a ridiculously exhausting event. Now, again, for newer players, the reason white can't move the knight back is just because of the pin, rook g7. And again, it's because of the bishop. White can't cover with the knight. I mean, white will have to go here, but that's it's better to resign than to play this position. White doesn't have a move. Yeah, I'm actually curious. Okay, we won't spend a long time on this, but looks like bishop e6 was the move, right? Remember when I was like lobbying for d5, but apparently this was a mistake, and Fabi just had to keep the bishop pair and then play d5, and it looks like black is like borderline winning here. White just doesn't have a move. But these retreating moves are really hard to like properly assess. Fabi was very tempted, like I was, by just opening up the center, underestimating the amount of trades that happen. But how just incredible composure by Fabi. Throughout the tournament, he loses to Theodoro and comes back potentially with 3 wins. And even in this game, just like being able to keep his cool and maximize his chances. Wow. Ishikkan and Donchenko are in a rook endgame now. Ridiculous. Mishra defeats Daniel Fernandez. Tragic last day for the British GM. He loses both games. Happens. Abhimanyu Mishra, the youngest ever GM, finishes on 6.5. No losses. Pretty solid result. So there's going to be a big group with 6.5. Hyman will stay on 6.5 if he loses. And all of this is very good news for Theodoro, who will remain in clear second if, in fact, White does not find a miracle. Fabia's gotten up. That is the worst sign possible for Hyman. He's gotten up from his chair. Okay, Hardaway versus a Wonder Liang still going. A Wonder pushing, but maybe not enough there. I wonder the co-winner of the Blitz yesterday. Or sorry, Brewington, that is. Matvishin drew lots of draws. Gunnar Anderson drew on demand with black. He gets his IM norm. Incredible performance by Gunnar Anderson. Absolutely amazing. He draws from a position of strength. And he started well, then lost, but then he beat Ryo Chen in the morning. And now draws Repka with black for the norm. That's great stuff. Let's have a look here at Dina. She also is contending for a norm. Oh, she's very close to drawing her game, but it might be a little bit too much pressure. She's down to a minute and a bad end game. It'll be tough. It'll be tough to hold. Let's see here. Is there even a move for White? Does White just resign? I'm afraid to turn the eval bar. I mean, like, what is the assessment? Oh, God. White has to give up the queen. No, bad. I think probably the best practical option is queen c6. Probably White has to do this. And I looked at queen h6. Probably White just has to take and try to make Fabi work for it a little bit. It's not totally over. Like, I wouldn't be... If I had the black side of this with Fabi, I wouldn't just be, like, prancing around celebrating. Bishop g5, not easy to play. Opening yourself up to some checks, but not really. Yeah, king f1 maybe, just to free up the rook, but yeah, these types of concrete moves are too easy for someone like Fabi. Queen d4. There's basically maximum one check, and that's all you have to calculate. Like one check, and it's over. No matter which check it is, there's just one. Begim is going to win, but Bruzan is going to beat Evan Park. So Evan with an unfortunate last round loss, but it won't impact his norm. He still gets his GM norm. Lots of the games finishing up here. Yeah, Alice Lee maybe draw. Dina's still holding on. For dear life. Ishikkan versus Donchenko apparently is a drawn rook endgame somehow. Of course, that's precisely what I thought would happen. And they just agreed to a draw, so congrats to Ishikkan for the norm. His final GM norm. He gets the title here in Charlotte. Feels very good. He played f3, which is a mistake. Okay, so he basically saw an opportunity to get a drawn rook endgame. Can't blame him. Yeah, and this actually looks pretty unpleasant for black. So apparently, in this position, the winning move was c3 and then b3. How easy is this to play with 4 minutes on the clock? And what he forgot about, I think, is that essentially here, White can't move the queen out of the way because you're tied to the c2 square. And paradoxically, taking the bishop isn't that impressive because black has the time to move the king out of dodge. And now it's like much harder to figure out what to do. So still, I'm sure he's going to be very happy. The GM title is for life, and a single difference between a win and a loss is negligible. Both players end on 6.5, together with about 7,000 others. All right. Final moments of this game, I think. Yeah, Hyman might just lose on time. Like, there's no move. Mark has made a norm. Yeah, he makes a norm no matter what. He loses, he makes a norm. Trust me, he's not going to be... I mean, he'll be happy, but once he, like, it dawns on him how close he was to holding Fabio to a draw. He was basically one move away. But you cannot... I mean, it's... When you're sitting at the board, it's so much different. Like, there's... Like, the pressure exerted by someone like Fabi is, like, hard to describe until you experience it. You just don't... Sometimes your brain just stops functioning. You see how... You feel how close you are to an incredible result, and you're just, like... You just get either paralyzed or you try to combat the nerves by playing quickly, and then, as you can see, that can also backfire. Queen c6, queen a7 instantly played. King h1. Oh, king h1. Sorry, king h1. Nope. Please stop doing that. Pause. The starting position is very interesting, but I prefer the current position. Bobby will take the knight. Yep. God, these 2800s are good. Fabi will gain rating from this event. That's insane. I think he's going to gain 3 points. From having 8 out of 9 against like 6 GMs. Yeah. God. Being 2800 sounds really nice. So easy to gain rating. And you lose one game, God forbid. Which he did. To Theodoro, he lost 7.5 points. Unbelievable. Queen g6. Yeah, this is exactly the line that I spotlighted. The last trick. Fabi is not going to go rook g7. That is a very basic drawing pattern, which is good to know. Fabi is going to go to the west. He's already at the west end, but he's going to go with his king to f8. Okay, there we go. Six GMs if you count Ishik. Yeah, icon count. I actually will. I don't understand how the circuit rating. I don't know if anybody understands. I don't know if you know if Fabi knows how many circuit points he will gain. Even probably FIDE doesn't know how it works. But winning the tournament is something we can all understand the impact of. Queen g5, queen b7, and queen g5 doesn't. Maybe he'll play it, but queen b7 is the simplest. I mean, I wouldn't be rushing into this endgame, honestly. Like, I think black probably has a better move. Yeah, maybe queen a2, queen e5, queen h2. It's hard to say what the most clinical is, because you can actually get the rooks off the board as well, but those endgames can be tough to win. Maybe rook f7, queen d8, and maybe I lose. So, case in point, always possible to lose any position. Yeah, queen b7 and trade the queens and win that endgame, I think, is the simplest. Actually. But I would actually try this. Yeah, queen g5 looks like a good practical try. Yeah, but okay, it's 17.11 points, but I don't know what the standings are. Yeah, Bruzan. Nice finish. He's going to defeat Park any second now. A lot of draws, obviously. Dina still trying to hold against Mitrabha. She might. I think she's on the way to holding that. She will get an IM norm if she can hold. He's played it. Yeah, queen g5 on the board. On the board. Yeah, I don't know if I'd be able to resist the temptation. Let's have a look. Okay, queen a6. Okay, come on. Queen a6. Yeah, it makes sense when you play it, like most engine moves. Yeah, queen g2, rook g7. Okay, queen a6 is clinical. Queen f5 check. King e8. I don't know if I see Fabi not trading. I mean, you see the queen trade, and it's actually still some technique is required. But now you just get the king in. What I would never do with black here, or I cannot imagine. Fabi, yeah, this is actually equal. But even if it wasn't, why would you ever risk this? Like, you have to calculate this super precisely. And there's just no need for this because white's pawns are way too slow. And black just gets the king to f5 and just starts pushing E, or Sikaris is pushing p. But Fabi declines the queen trade. He says, no, queen d8. Beautiful. White can get back to g5, but now black will take. And now the g5 pawn is going to be toast. Typical Fabi, clinical until the end. Just like it's in their blood to be so accurate. Queen g4, then he will play rook g7, I think. Yeah, we're watching the finishing moments here of the US Masters. Queen g4 played. Rook h7 also. Wait a second. What is the move here? Rook g7, queen f5, king e7, I think, is winning on the spot. Yeah, now at this point there's many roads lead to Charlotte, but yeah, 10 minutes for Fabi seems like an eternity at this point. Notice how he doesn't rush. Like, Fabi is a good example. A lot of younger players would start blitzing out the moves, but he's taking as long as he needs to just cross his T's and dot his I's. Yeah, Bruzon has won. Tough loss for Evan Park to end the tournament, but he still has his norm. I think Brewington is about to... He's been sort of almost losing for a long time, but he's got 30 seconds to 30 minutes. Rook g7. Yep, there we go. Queen f5, I think just king g8. And the king ends the game on the safest square on the board, on h8. Let's see, Dina is losing apparently. We'll see. Yeah, no, Dina unfortunately did not manage to hold it. Too low on time, I'm afraid. Tough. Hard to stick the landing. So frustrated. The last round of a tournament, everybody hates last rounds. Yeah, queen f5, king g8. This is resignable. That might be the best move. Best move might be... Oops, sorry. Oh, he's played it. No, he has played it. Time for king g8, I think. Yeah, he should hold his head up, Hyman. Yeah. I'm sure he would laugh at this point right now. No, that's it. King g8. Yep, king g8 played. Queen h3. Yeah, this is... I mean, you could even play king h8. Like, that's what the Soviets would play. Queen d5 check. Mark wants queen f3. Kavlishvili resigned. Wow, Tucker Begim with 2 wins over GMs the last day. What an incredible finish to her tournament. I don't think she gets a norm though. She suffered some defeats early in the tournament. She lost, and she made some draws, so maybe that hurt her chances. But might be close. Like this list that I have is unofficial. She will finish on. What will she finish on? She will finish on. I think. Let's see. Yeah, wow. 7 points. She gets 7 points. That's incredible. So we'll have the final standings for you, or something resembling the final standings soon. But it looks like 7 points will be Nizhnik, Oparin, Begim, and that might be it. Whoa. Rook G3 played. Oh, that's it. Queen E6, King H8. Catapulting her to third place are 2 victories over Brodsky and Kevlishvili. Wild. Yeah, Fabio leans back. He knows the tournament has been won. His work is over. Rook G1. Okay, last chance. Queen D5, Rook G2. Queen D1, King H2. Still fighting. Okay, I would go Rook G2 and then find some elegant move for Zugzwang. Maybe King G7. Because wherever you go with the king, there's actually a check. It's quite annoying. There's a gazillion winning moves, though. No, King H2 played. Whoa. Oh, Rook G2, King H1. How is there no mate there? Okay, Rook G7, yeah. Easy. Easiest win. That's it. White has to give up all his pieces. We're about to see a handshake. And we're about to watch Fabiano Caruana ascend to victory with 8 points out of 9. What a win. And I mean, so many of his games, it looked like could be a disaster. Handshake. And as usual, the class never lies. So many murmurs about, like, only if these 2800s played open tournaments, they'd be 2300. Nope. In fact, he's even higher in the 2800s after this tournament. Pretty heartbreaking loss for Hyman, but he fought incredibly well. He came very close. Really, the pivotal moment was when he allowed Fabi's bishop to get active. I think we could all feel the energy change in the game. It was still a draw. But King H1, okay, then he had to find some ideas on demand. Once that was missed, it was just smooth operator. Caruana finding Queen A5 and H6, all the tough ideas, and then converting seamlessly to win the tournament on 8 out of 9. Amazing. Okay, I'm going to let him know. I mean, again, exhaustion starts to set in right after the final game. But there you go. The piece is set up for the final time. So Fabi, clear first. 8 out of 9. So he loses to Theodoro. But this is what, you know, incredible players do. He comes back with a win against Woodward with the black pieces in the evening round. That game he had to win by the skin of his teeth in a rook endgame. Then in the morning, he defeats Matvishin. It was actually pretty interesting game, but just better understanding of the structure. And then now, maybe the hardest game of the tournament in some ways. But, of course, that's not for me to say. Theodoro finishes in clear second on 7.5. And like I said, third place is a tie between Oparin. Again, this is just me doing the calculation, so this is to be confirmed. But I'm pretty confident it is Oparin, Nizhnik, and yeah, unfortunately Hyman gets leapfrogged because he stays on 6.5. But that's life. And let's see, is that it? And Begim. Begim defeats Kevlishvili. Wow, that's it. I think that is all 3 players on 7. So that's the top 5 for you. It's Fabi winning the tournament, Theodoro in second, and then Oparin, Nizhnik, and Begim on 7 out of 9, which used to be the winning score in all previous years. Not this time. And then 6.5, there's like 700 people. But of course, of those people, the happiest ones are the ones who normed. This is, again, subject to confirmation, but looks like at least Ishikkan, we can confirm, gets a final GM norm and 2,500 feet. Hyman does get still a GM norm, as does Evan Park. Both of them had it in their pockets before the start of the game. Tianchi Wang, Steve Wang. Let's see, how did he do? He needed to win for a norm. I don't know if his game was actually on DGT. So you can wait for the final standings to figure out the rest. Dina, sadly, did not pull out the draw and loses to Mitrabha. Still a great tournament for her. Oparin might be kicking himself slightly for that draw offer, but, you know, cannot blame someone after such a long tournament. And Brandon's still fighting. Just, like, won't give up. He's been down to increment for, like, ages now. His position seems to be getting better. I think he's still lost, though, after the Black King can sort of infiltrate along these squares. Yuri Drushka does not manage to beat Bortnik for the norm, so that game ends in a draw as well. Yeah, so just a couple games going on. We're going to start wrapping up. Alice Lee still playing. We're not going to wait for, obviously, for every game to finish. Mishra wins his game against Daniel Fernandez. Wonder does defeat Brewington. Gleb Dudin draws Anthony Atanasov. Great tournament for Anthony Atanasov. Some very impressive wins, including against Woodward in the morning. I'm sure Kaden must have mentioned that. And that's basically all she wrote. Yeah, King D6 by Luca. Yeah, so we're going to start wrapping up. I let Fabi know. But, okay, of course, he's got more important things to do, like get lots of rest and receive congratulations that are very well deserved. He does also tie for the first in the Blitz tournament. And then that ended like midnight, past midnight yesterday. And then the first round was at 10 a.m. So the like physical, psychological, emotional difficulty of such a tournament cannot be overstated. Probably already headed to the airport. I don't know about that. I think a steakhouse dinner is in order. There's a good one across the street. Unfortunately, I did not play him in the Blitz. I did not get to play him, but we did tie for first. What a game. Yeah, I mean, C squared, I think Christian deserves to hear from Fabi. I'm going to wrap it up, though, because it's been some long days for the commentators as well. I want to shout out a couple of people before we close shop for the final day. Of course, the chess continues with the World Championship next round. I think tomorrow I'll be commentating that as well. So I want to shout out, first of all, the entire organizational staff of the tournament, my good friend Peter. For the, I think, third or fourth year in a row, the U.S. Masters moved from Greensboro to Charlotte. And I think nobody can argue that any tournament here sets the standard organizationally and in terms of the conditions offered to the players. 2 games a day is incredibly hard, but it helps when the conditions are adequate and when the rounds start on time and when there's ample TDs in the tournament room and the cameras work well. And I think for the most part, there were almost no hitches in the commentary. So Peter deserves, he worked morning to night every day and make sure everything was done and taken care of. Caden made my job very easy. He did the morning shift, but he also helped a lot with the tech, ran back and forth from the tournament hall to the commentary room, and made sure all I had to do was keep my butt still and just talk about chess moves, which is the easy part. And of course, to all the viewers, thank you very much for tuning in morning and night to watch the rounds. Congrats to Fabiano for first, Theodoro for second, and then 3 players, Oparin, Nizhnik, and Begim for a tie of third place. Some very handsome cash prizes will be distributed. And parties will be had tonight. But World Championship resumes tomorrow, so you won't have to wait long for more action. But this was the final round of the U.S. Masters, a clutch win for Fabiano Caruana as he gains rating in his first Open tournament in many years, losing only one game to Theodoro, who I'm sure must feel jubilant at his performance as well. He approaches 2650. Daniel Naroditsky and GM Caden Trofe, as well as the entire organizational crew here at the U.S. Masters from downtown Charlotte, saying goodbye to you one final time. Thanks so much to the live audience here in the commentary room and people watching on the various Twitch channels and the internets. This couldn't happen without you. So one more congratulations to Fabi. Thank you to everybody who made this possible, and good night.